Chapter 1253. Back then, Emperor Yu and Emperor Shing were equally famous. One led the human race and the monster race to protect the new Earth, while the other was a space wanderer who opened the ruins of immortality. The 9 cauldrons that Emperor Yu created with the help of many ancient eras' almighty powers could be called true weapons. They were much more powerful than spiritual treasures. Back off. Once you unleash your power, the immortal trap array will be activated ahead of time. You'll all die. Seeing the 4 nascent soul old monsters following him, Jiang Tian was sure that these 4 old guys could be of great use, but he didn't show it. Kong Teichu is indeed powerful. This old man is regretting asking people to stop him from recovering his spirit qi. In the sky, Yu Wendon looked down at Jiang Tian and shook his head with a wry smile. Suddenly, his eyes became serious and he said with a sad voice, "But he, Jiang Taichu, killed my beloved son, slaughtered my heirs, and nearly wiped out my Yu clan. He disgraced my name and bullied my Qin clan. 3 of my best friends also died in his hands. This hatred is as deep as the ocean." His shout was like a clap of thunder. "If I, Yu Wendon, don't avenge them, how can I face my dead friends and relatives? How can I face the ancestors of the Qin dynasty?" Chao Shixiang listened carefully. "Those people who died unjustly can't be blamed on me, Yu Wendon. They can only blame Jiang Taichu for not knowing when to stop enforcing me." "What a pity." Jiang Tian waved his hand and asked the 4 nascent soul old monsters to back off. He put his hands behind his back and looked at the 9 continents above him with a regretful expression. The splendid mountains and rivers were formed by gathering the ancient spirit qi into the 9 ancient cauldrons. At this time, the power was shocking and terrifying. Indeed, the 9 cauldrons were far more powerful than 100 nuclear weapons. If it hit the mortal world, it could destroy at least 1,000 miles and destroy a small country. Ji Shiqi was not exaggerating when he said that it could destroy cities and countries. However, the one using these cauldrons was not an ancient deity or a virtuous paragon, it was only Yu Wending who was at the gold core realm. With his spiritual power, he could only activate the 9 cauldrons once. He couldn't even activate all 9 cauldrons. Only 3 of the continents were relatively solid. The other 6 continents were already very weak and ethereal. Furthermore, once the 9 cauldrons' dermic powers were used, they would all be used up in one go and become ordinary items. If Yu Wendon wanted to use it again, it was almost impossible, because he did not have the ability to gather the scattered and dried up spirit qi again. "If you had attacked me a year ago, I'm afraid that I would have had to use my trump card to break this technique. But now," Jiang Tian shook his head disdainfully and sighed. Back then, Jiang Tian hadn't condensed his false core yet. In order to kill sacred ancestor Qiliao, who was at the nascent soul realm, he had forcefully pulled open the heaven-shaking bow. The price he had paid was that he had been severely injured and his blood had dried up. It took him more than a month to recover his peak cultivation. But now, Yu Wendon was facing Jiang Tian, who had formed 6 fake cores and had 6 divine bodies. Even the 1,000 Buddha relic pagoda, the treasure of West Earth, couldn't hurt Jiang Tian, let alone the 9 cauldrons. "Kong Teichu, you're still so arrogant even now. Do you know that you're going to die?" Yu Wendon's face was extremely serious. His gray hair fluttered in the air and his eyes shot out lightning bolts. His sleeves fluttered as he stepped forward and formed a seal with his hands with difficulty. He was desperately controlling the 9 vast continents to suppress Jiang Tian. Then, his body trembled and let out cracking sounds. His body seemed to be unable to withstand the enormous earth spirit qi. Blood kept dripping from the corner of his mouth, but his sleeves fluttered and his energy was extremely strong. He kept forming seals with his hands and pressing them down. Every time he pressed his hands down, there would be violent dermic powers. Electricity would appear around him and the wind would howl. The world would change color and become chaotic. Kong Teichu die. In the end, he pressed down the last seal. Suddenly, the 9 splendid mountains and rivers pressed down on Jiang Tian from a few thousand meters in the air like Mars crashing into Earth. Before the 9 continents arrived, the violent pressure had already arrived. At that moment, The earth trembled and huge gullies a few meters wide appeared. The mountains shook and huge rocks rolled down as if there was a magnitude 9 earthquake. Countless huge trees were broken and fell. Then they cracked and turned into wood chips and powder. Countless large rocks flew in all directions and exploded in the air. That's terrifying. At that moment, Chao Shixiang, Chao Jinjia and the other military personnel had already dug into the bunker 100 meters underground that could withstand the penetrating missiles. However, the huge bunker made of special cement was still shaking and cracking. Kang Teichu, I'll use this splendid mountains and rivers to test your supreme dermic powers. Yu Wendon shouted. He staggered and his body was shaking. Every time he spoke, his energy weakened a little and he spat out a mouthful of blood. In the end, his face turned pale and his shirt was soaked with blood, but he didn't feel sad at all. Instead, he was full of joy. Jing, my friends, I've avenged you. I've finally gotten rid of Jiang Taichu, who is a threat to the common people. Yu Wendon believed it. No one in the world could get out of the splendid mountains and rivers, unless the ancient deities woke up and Jiang Tian was a nascent soul cultivator. But apparently, Jiang Tian wasn't. Besides, even if he was a nascent soul cultivator, would he dare to use it? The deity trap array immediately triggered the tribulation and he would die even more miserably. He was exhausted both physically and mentally. He opened his heavy eyelids and wanted to enjoy the scene of Jiang Tian being crushed into pieces by the 9 splendid mountains and rivers. But he had never thought that he would see an unbelievable scene. Jiang Tian's face turned cold. His dantian rumbled and a few thick earth god suppressing chains exploded at the same time. The fake elixir of the flying dragon in his dantian jumped and he swayed, turning into the flying dragon divine body of 1,000 feet tall. A flying dragon divine body. No, it's 10 times or 100 times more powerful than a flying dragon divine body. What kind of Dharma form is this? A deity puppet or Dharma self and one? Aren't you afraid of the deity trap array's tribulation? Yu Jing'an widened his eyes in disbelief as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over his head. Tribulation and tribulation? Let me see how you're going to destroy me. Jiang Tian with the flying dragon divine body said with a thunderous voice. His eyes shot out divine lightning and his body was as mighty as a dragon. Under Yu Wendon's incredulous gaze, Jiang Tian leaped up and grabbed the myriad origin stone cauldron from his dantian. He swung it like Pangu swinging a giant axe to cleave apart the chaos. He smashed it towards the first layer of mountains and rivers. At first, the myriad stone cauldron was only a normal size. However, as Jiang Tian swung it, it rapidly expanded to a height of 1,000 meters. It was like a giant pillar that soared into the sky like a meteor, heavily smashing into the first layer of splendid mountains and rivers. Boom! 10,000 meters above Mount Amei, the ground of the first layer of the splendid mountains and rivers shook violently. When the myriad origin cauldron came crashing down, a massive fissure appeared on the surface of this continent. Mountain peaks collapsed, rivers twisted, magma erupted from the ground, and the earth began to shake violently like waves. Soon after, the myriad stone cauldron directly pierced through the continent from the bottom. It emerged from the surface and streaked across, causing the continent to explode uncontrollably. It was as if dozens of nuclear weapons had exploded at the same time. Boundless airwaves rushed into the distance and formed huge white rings of clouds in the sky. Above it, colorful mushroom clouds appeared one after another. It was an extremely magnificent sight. These white rings of clouds expanded like ripples. They expanded and spread out for 10 kilometers, 100 kilometers, and 1,000 kilometers in an instant. Everyone saw this scene. This is too shocking. Terrifying. It has the power to destroy the world. Such a powerful and heaven-defying celestial weapon attack was still broken by Kang Teichu. The whole of Huaxia was shaken. More than 1 billion people heard the terrifying explosion and saw this shocking scene. They couldn't help but talk about it and couldn't calm down. How is this possible? Even the splendid mountains and rivers can be broken. Many famous preaching disciples, reclusive royalty experts, and disciples were thrown off their feet by the impact of the rings of clouds. They cried out in shock like cats that were burned by fire. Could this kid be the reincarnation of an ancient true god? Even Ji Muxian was stunned. His eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. The old monk of Huangjue Temple also felt his heart skip a beat. He was extremely shocked and felt a chill all over his body. He couldn't stop trembling. The higher one reached their level, the more secrets they knew. They could sense the vastness and greatness of the heaven and earth's powers. At that moment, they understood what Jiang Tian's strike meant. One had to know that the splendid mountains and rivers was formed when ancient paragons like Emperor Yu used their overwhelming dermic powers to absorb and condense the spiritual energy of a state. It contained the power of famous mountains, rivers, and vast territories. It was all-encompassing and unshakable. However, it was still broken by Jiang Tian. At that moment, Ji Muxian and company felt that Jiang Tian was the reincarnation of an ancient true god. It was as though Pangu had been reborn and Gonggong had reappeared. Such a power that could shake the world was something they could only look up to and worship. They didn't dare to have any thoughts of competing with him. Our Lord's strength is just too powerful. The might of his divine body is actually so terrifying. Even if our Lord were to arrive in the ruins of immortality, he would still be considered a powerhouse. He would definitely be able to wrestle with that old villain, the Ruins Emperor. The three old monsters, Voidwalker, True Dragon, and Mingi, felt their hearts race as they watched. They felt giddy and excited, yearning to ascend to the heavens with Jiang Tian and fight the 9 cauldrons together, tearing apart the landmasses that blotted out the sky. Kill this bunch of clowns that don't know what's good for them. Kill them all. Lian Sheng's eyes widened in anger as he revealed a ferocious look as he roared loudly. Boom! The destruction of the first splendid mountains and rivers had already turned into chaos. From everyone's point of view, they could no longer see Jiang Tian's figure. All they saw was a towering mountain peak in the middle of the second splendid mountains and rivers. The plains had turned into mountain peaks and the mountain peaks had sunk into lakes. The landmasses had been pierced, destroyed, and cracked. The mountain peaks that suddenly appeared were none other than the myriad stone cauldrons. At the next instant, the splendid mountains and rivers exploded once again. Following that, boom! The rest of the continents, which seemed vague and not solid enough, were broken by Jiang Tian one after another. All of this only took a few minutes. And the huge cloud ring had already expanded to cover the entire Huaxia. It was even spreading outwards, rushing towards Asia. The cloud ring's speed of expansion had already broken the sound barrier and was comparable to the shockwave of a nuclear bomb. If there was a fighter jet in the sky, it would also be torn into scrap metal. Under Yu Wenden's incredulous gaze, Jiang Tian stepped into the air and walked out of the 9th splendid mountains and rivers that had collapsed. He ascended to the sky and looked down at Yu Wenden. He asked coldly, "Yu Wenden, are you convinced now?" Chapter 1254. Behind Jiang Tian was an ocean of chaos. Colorful miasma was rolling and rolling, and huge thunderbolts were zigzagging in all directions. Vast amounts of spirit chi were squeezing, tearing, and spinning, covering the sky and the sun. The scene was chaotic and magnificent. And yet, Jiang Tian was wearing a white robe and his hair was neat. He was as handsome as a god. Apparently, he still had energy left. He's too powerful. Down below, ancestral patriarch True Dragon and the other nascent soul cultivators looked at Jiang Tian with admiration. They were dizzy and their minds were in a trance. The power of the splendid mountain river formation phenomenon was too vast and majestic. They knew they wouldn't be able to resist it and would be crushed immediately if they were in it. And yet, Jiang Tian had broken it in just a few minutes. I can't believe you're so powerful that you can break the 9 levels of the splendid mountain river. Since things have come to this, Yu Wending, admit defeat. In the sky, Yu Wenden smiled with a pale face. At this moment, his entire body was dyed with blood, and his originally straight figure had already bent down. He coughed endlessly and was weak, and his white hair trembled slightly. He'd already exhausted all his magic energy and true essence, causing him to seem like a candle in the wind that was on the verge of death. But a second later, this deity trap array isn't just used to restrict the level of cultivators. It's also prepared to kill invaders from space and extraterrestrial civilizations. This is the power of heaven. It can even kill nascent soul cultivators and soul formation cultivators. Can you resist it, Kong Taechu? Before he finished, "It's here." Jiang Tian suddenly raised his head to look at the sky. His pupils shrank and a trace of seriousness appeared on his face. At this moment, he could already feel a vast, suppressive and murderous force coming from the depths of the sky. That energy was extremely powerful and frightening, as if an ancient divine king had woken up or a divine beast was showing off its power, suppressing Jiang Tian. It was 10 times more powerful than the 9 levels of the splendid mountain river and more terrifying than the thunder tribulation Jiang Tian had faced when he broke through to the golden core level in his previous life. It was comparable to the heavenly tribulation when he was a nascent soul cultivator. The heavenly tribulation of the deity trap array is here. The wrath of the heavens has arrived. This power was very obvious. Not only did Jiang Tian feel it, even Ji Muxian and the others who were dozens of miles away could feel it. This power was very mysterious. It densely covered the surroundings and appeared in all directions. They felt as if they were trapped in cement, and it was difficult for them to even move their fingers. The pressure grew stronger and stronger. His internal organs felt like they were about to explode, and the bones in his body creaked as if they were about to shatter. However, the surrounding grass and trees were not damaged at all. Even the air was normal. In a village at the foot of the mountain, a group of dirty children stared at the sky with their eyes wide open, but they were safe and sound. It was obvious that this was a type of magical power confinement and attack. It possessed some kind of spiritual intelligence and was not pure energy. It was not an indiscriminate bombardment. It was only aimed at suppressing and killing cultivators. Moreover, the most frightening thing was that Ji Muxian and the rest realized that the aura in their bodies had been completely sealed and they couldn't circulate it at all. Not to mention resisting, Ji Muxian and the others couldn't even escape. One after another, they fell to the ground in a sorry state. "Kong Taechu, you're dead meat." However, Ji Muxian and the rest didn't have the slightest fear. Instead, they looked at the depths of the sky with ecstasy. This meant that Jiang Tian would definitely die this time. At this moment, there was an obvious change in the depths of the sky. Huge black spatial rifts appeared in the sky, and beams of colorful light with long tails rushed out of the rifts, shooting toward the earth like comets. Mighty heavenly might? It's just a mere confinement formation. What kind of heavenly might is this? Even if heavenly might wants me to die, I'll fight it. Seeing this, Jiang Tian's eyes flashed with a trace of determination. His hair and long robe fluttered in the wind. He straightened his body like a peerless heavenly sword unsheathed, brimming with an extremely sharp aura. Crack, crack. After a few crisp sounds, all the thick earth god suppressing chains broke. The 6 fake elixir cores jumped at the same time. His dantian rumbled, and a vast power, like magma gushing out and a rocket launching, soared into the sky from Jiang Tian's body and spread out in all directions. Since Jiang Tian had already triggered the immortal trap formation, there was no need to suppress his cultivation. He just needed to crush him. Boom. Yu Wendon was the first to bear the brunt of the impact. He was sent flying several kilometers away, vomiting blood and breaking countless bones and tendons. When these rays of light reached an altitude of 20,000 meters, they suddenly drifted away and turned into billowing clouds and mist, rolling and surging. Some of the clouds and mist were dark red like blood, while some were dark gray. It gave people a complicated feeling of a bloody massacre and a tragic death. In the depths of the clouds and mist, 2 bright rays of light that seemed to be able to penetrate one's mind flashed and flashed, looking at Jiang Tian with murderous intent. This is the array spirit of the immortal trap formation. It is not the divine soul of a person or any other creature. It is formed by the obsession and infinite killing intent of the ancient sages who sacrificed themselves. After a long time, It has gained intelligence and can kill all the powerful cultivators in the formation. Yu Wendin took the opportunity to dash into the distance with a hideous smile. In his eyes, Jiang Tian was already a dead man. Years ago, when the ancient sages fought against the invaders from other planets, their friends, comrades, and teachers fell like rain. Their hatred and murderous intent were so great that it turned into a shocking killing intent that could trigger the heavenly tribulation. Kong Teichu, you can't stop them. Besides, the great Tao of Empress Hua, Fuxi the Great, Suiren the Great, Emperor Yu, Emperor Zhongli, Emperor Ao, and several other ancient emperors are also in this formation. They will kill you together. In the sky, the colorful clouds were rolling, and the two rays of light that could penetrate one's heart slowly receded. But then, the gray clouds in the sky turned into a giant gray hand that was 100 acres wide. It grabbed at Jiang Tian's head. The deathly gray giant palm blotted out the sky like a huge dark cloud, filled with a tragic and austere aura. Thousands of white skeletons appeared, roaring ferociously. They were formed by the rolling death chi, which could imprison and devour all vitality. Even nascent soul overlords couldn't resist it. Kill! Jiang Tian shouted. The golden divine body of gung metal rushed out of his dantian and crossed 10 miles in an instant. He jumped on the horse and slashed at the giant death chi hand. However, when the divine body of gung metal was a few hundred meters away from the hand, his dantian suddenly shook. The fake core wrapped in golden blood left his body and flew toward the giant hand. The gung metal divine body suddenly froze and fell from the sky. Even his eyes, which were like golden lanterns, became dull and dim. The consciousness of Jiang Tian's main body, which was poured into his sea of consciousness, was actually completely taken away. What a fierce array spirit! What a terrifying death chi! Jiang Tian felt a sharp pain in his head. The vital essence in his body became unstable and he spat out a mouthful of blood. He couldn't help but be shocked. Pumph! The array spirit snorted disdainfully from the depths of the clouds. It seemed to be proud. It was like rolling thunder and the sound was heard from 100 miles away. Ji Muxian and the others heard it clearly. They couldn't help but be shocked. Their breaths became chaotic and they spat out a mouthful of blood. Then, the gray giant held the fake core of gung metal and turned its palm into a fist. It smashed toward the divine body of gung metal as if it wanted to destroy it completely. Hehe, Kong Teichu, you asked for it? Seeing this, Yu Wending smiled proudly. Even the Dharma form had fallen. What were the chances of Jiang Tian winning? It was almost certain that he would lose. Kill again. How long do you want to restrict Earth? Why don't you believe that your descendants will be stronger than you? Jiang Tian wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. A trace of determination flashed in his eyes. He shouted angrily and the Thunder Slaughter divine body spread its wings and rushed out of his danton. The Thunder Slaughter divine body, which was thousands of feet tall, rushed out. It was completely formed by the intertwining of pure thunder and lightning. The bright light illuminated the mountains and rivers for thousands of miles. It was as if a sun was blooming in the sky. What? There's a Dharma form. How is this possible? Yu Wending, Ji Muxian, the old monk of Huangjue Temple and the others screamed in disbelief. Historically, golden core experts only had one golden core and could only unleash one Dharma form. However, Jiang Tian had a second golden core and a second Dharma form. This was simply unheard of. It was the first time this had happened since the beginning of the world. The two lamp-like eyes in the depths of the clouds also swept over and stared at the Thunder Slaughter divine body in disbelief. Under their shocked gazes, the Thunder Slaughter divine body flapped its wind and thunder wings and quickly approached the death chi giant fist. He clenched his hands and condensed a 1,000-meter-long purple thunder blade. He violently slashed the death chi giant fist like a knife cutting water. The death chi fist persisted for a full 3 seconds before the array spirit in the depths of the clouds let out a sorrowful roar full of unwillingness. Shocking cracks began to appear on the fist, and it collapsed with a loud bang. The Gingjin false stand fell. The eyes of the gung metal divine body that was about to fall to the ground suddenly lit up. Its thumb trembled and then it jumped up like a carp. It shot straight up and grabbed the falling gunmetal fake core and pressed it into its dantian. Then, it roared and rushed into the clouds with the thunder slaughter divine body. They attacked the array spirit in the depths of the clouds. Chapter 12:55. So powerful! The gaze, in the depths of the clouds, suddenly blazed. After a thunderous exclamation, the boundless red light and smoke turned into two blood-red halberds that were engraved with countless complicated Tao patterns and 10 times more condensed than the giant palm of death aura. The halberd was more than 1,000 meters long. It swept across the sky like a missile, releasing an iron-blooded murderous aura and power. It tore the space apart in many colors, moving at a speed that was 100 times faster than the speed of sound. Silently, it dashed toward the two god bodies. These halberds are many times more powerful than the deity-slaying spear of the Superbrain Man. They're indeed the work of the ancient sages of Huaxia. Seeing this, Jiang Tian frowned and his eyes glittered. The halberds were extremely solid, far stronger than metals such as frost iron essence. They were also extremely fast. They could penetrate mountains and even spaceships made of titanium alloys with pure physical attacks. The runes on it were even more terrifying. They were continuously absorbing the energy of the deity trap array, which was much more powerful than the simultaneous explosion of 10 nuclear weapons. Even a soul formation overlord would have a hard time dealing with it. Kill! The divine body of gunmetal was enraged. Golden light flashed in its lantern-like eyes. It waved its long blade and slashed one halberd down, while the other was knocked away. However, the divine body of gunmetal was already covered in cracks. It spat out golden blood and was knocked dozens of miles away, smashing a mountain a few hundred meters high. The second halberd suddenly turned around and pierced into the dantian of the divine body of Lei Meng. The divine body of Lei Meng stiffened. Tiny sparks of electricity shot out and scattered in the air. At the same time, the eyes, like two lampposts, fell on Jiang Tian, as if they were confirming something. Then, after a sneer, bolts of lightning as thick as dragons erupted from the clouds and struck at Jiang Tian. "You're just an array spirit. You can't kill me." Jiang Tian laughed crazily. With a rumbling sound, a thick earth shield with a radius of a few thousand meters was formed, firmly blocking the lightning. Those lightning bolts continued to meander, as if they wanted to pierce through the thick earth barrier. That array spirit even extracted some of the magic power of the red battle spear, wanting to kill Jiang Tian's original body. However, the thick earth shield continued to solidify and thicken. Although Jiang Tian's body shook violently and he kept vomiting blood, he still laughed loudly. After a few flicks of the fingers, Lei Su's body seemed to be on the verge of shattering. Thick lightning bolts shot out from his mouth, but the fighting will in his eyes was getting crazier. "Break!" With a thunderous roar, thick thunderbolts rushed out of his dantian like giant pythons. They coiled around the battle spear that pierced into his dantian and tore it apart, turning it into ashes that scattered in the air. If the array spirit hadn't diverted part of the spear's energy, perhaps Lei Meng's divine body would have been shattered. However, since he wanted to kill Jiang Tian's true body, he had scattered his power, which gave the Thunder Slaughter godly body a chance to counterattack. Kill! The Thunder Slaughter godly body's eyes shot out lightning bolts and murderous auras that were hundreds of meters long. He had already skyrocketed and rushed into the clouds. "Which civilization are you from? Why are you so powerful?" With an indignant roar, the Thunder Slaughter godly body swept his blade. A lightning bolt that was thousands of meters long cut through the entire sky. Then, there was an earth-shattering explosion that was like a nuclear explosion. This time, the entire earth trembled slightly. Hurricanes filled the clouds and the world was in chaos. The great immortal trap formation has been destroyed? Ji Muxian's face was filled with shock and disbelief. He looked at Jiang Tian's bloodstained figure as if he had seen a demon. At this moment, he felt that the suppressive power had disappeared, and the aura in his body was circulating freely. In fact, it wasn't just him. All the humans and creatures in the world felt that some kind of invisible restraint and suppression had been broken and disappeared. Some of the gifted people's powers were slowly awakening. They seemed to have endless power and their bodies were as light as a swallow. Some of them were in high spirits, feeling refreshed and full of fighting spirit. It was as if their brains had become smarter and more flexible. The great immortal trap formation had been destroyed. Jiang Tian was already injured. However, he felt that Jiang Tian was even more terrifying. What was unshakable was the ultimate powerhouse under the starry sky. The great immortal trap formation hasn't been destroyed yet. The formation structure still covers the earth, but the formation spirit is dead. An elder of the Yu family murmured with despair in his eyes. Everything has been settled. Kong Teichu still won. The old monk of Huangjue Temple had despair in his eyes. Reclusive royalty and the descendants of famous preaching sects looked defeated and his eyes were trembling. Let's run. Kong Teichu is a ferocious person. Next, there will be endless revenge. Li Kuangkol said with a sobbing tone. As soon as these words came out, everyone felt a chill from head to toe. Where could they run to now? Even if they ran to the ends of the earth, could they escape Kong Teichu's pursuit? I heard that ancient gods live in seclusion in mysterious places like the Hanging Gardens of Babylon and the Egyptian pyramids. We can only go there and unite with them. The eyes of the elder of the Yu family suddenly brightened and a glint of determination flashed in his eyes. Just as everyone was about to leave, suddenly, a roar filled with impatience and indignation came from the sky. Kong Teichu, do you think you've won? Are you gloating? No, the next battle will be even more terrifying because the divine soul avatar of the ancient emperors is about to arrive. As soon as Yu Wendon finished speaking, there was a loud bang. In the void universe, world-destroying thunder and lightning gathered. A huge black stone tablet, a 5-colored rock, a 1,000-meter-long sword, and a lusterless pearl with cloud patterns on it flew over like meteors crashing to the ground. In fact, there were many meteorites in the surroundings. Some of them were pitch black, and some of them were emitting resplendent light, containing violent energy fluctuations. The largest of them had a radius of several thousand meters, like a huge mountain peak stretching across the sky. Empress was Sky-Patching Stone, Fushi the Great's Darkest Stone Tablet, Zhong Li's Sky-Extinguishing Sword that cut through the ancient path of stars, Ao Huang's Dinghai Pearl. Oh my god, these are all ancestral artifacts. Now that they've reappeared, Kong Teichu, you're definitely going to die. Staring at those treasures, Yu Wendon was so excited that his body trembled. Then, he knelt down in the sky and worshipped them sincerely. Those ancestral artifacts had a longer history than the 9 cauldrons of the splendid landscape. They were the Dharma treasures of the ancient emperors and were famous during the Age of Legends. How terrifying! These ancestral artifacts have reappeared. Kong Teichu is definitely going to die this time. At this moment, Ji Muxian and the others once again felt the vast and surging power as if a continent was pressing down on them. Their bones felt like they were going to explode. They prostrated themselves on the ground and shivered uneasily like quails in the cold wind. After a moment of panic, a sinister and complacent expression appeared. So the ancestral artifacts of the ancient Age of Legends have appeared in Huaxia. This is the real divine punishment and tribulation of the great immortal trap formation. It's even more terrifying than the formation spirit. I wonder if Kong Teichu can withstand it. If he can, he'll undoubtedly be the strongest person under the starry sky. At this moment, not only them, but all over the world, the Holy See in the West, the Brahmin and Buddhism in India, and Hongmeng in Huaxia, and even the old monsters and living fossils who had hidden themselves for various reasons, all felt the aura of destruction. They trembled and looked at the sky above Mount Amei in horror. At this moment, no one could ignore such a scene. Many hidden old monsters came out and swept to the eastern hemisphere like lightning. They landed in Huaxia and observed carefully. In the countless years since the great immortal trap formation was set up, there were indeed powerful people who had broken through the 3rd level of foundation establishment and triggered the suppression of the great immortal trap formation. This was already known as the Heavenly Tribulation, but no powerful person had ever triggered the ancestral artifact's tribulation. Today's vast and boundless phenomenon and the Heavenly Tribulation formed by the Great Emperor's brand could be said to be unprecedented. They had never heard of or seen it before, so how could they miss it? Then they were shocked to see. Rumble. Numerous human-shaped thunderbolts suddenly burst out from the spatial cracks in the depths of the sky and arrived above the many ancestral artifacts. Every one of them was thousands of feet tall and extraordinarily mighty. They were completely formed by scorching thunderbolts and had a majestic aura that could suppress the world with one hand. They were 100 kilometers away from Jiangtian and ordinary people couldn't see them. Even the sky-immortal old monsters could only vaguely sense them with their immortal will. An ancient great empress walked out and landed dozens of miles away in a blink. She had a slim waist and full breasts. She stepped on a giant toad or frog and held a willow branch in her hand. She had a beautiful face and her clothes were fluttering in the wind. She was surrounded by a sacred and noble aura. Behind her, images formed by thunderbolts flashed in the sky. There was a willow branch that was stained with yellow soil to create humans, a turtle's leg that was cut off to gather 5 colored stones to mend the sky. It was as if history was repeating itself. Empress Hua. Yu Wendon cried and kowtowed as if he had seen a god. She was one of the ancient gods in Hua Xia's legends, Nua, also known as Empress Hua. She was worshipped by all the people of Hua Xia and was extremely powerful and had a supreme status. A human-shaped thunderbolt. How can there be such a thing? This great immortal trap formation is so terrifying. At this time, even the true dragon patriarch and the other 3 old monsters were dumbfounded. Cold sweat flowed down their foreheads like a stream. They had also gone through the thunder tribulation when they formed their golden core. They had seen a lot of thunder tribulations caused by other people's thunder tribulations. However, they were only as thick as an arm. They had heard that only the peerless geniuses deep in the universe could trigger large-scale thunder tribulations. Furthermore, they had never seen or heard of lightning that had condensed into the shape of a human body and was of such a large scale before their eyes. In a blink, the 4 nascent soul-old monsters were at their wits' end. The human-shaped thunderbolt was too powerful. They would immediately turn into ashes if they rushed forward. The seal of the Tao. The ancient gods of Hua Xia are so powerful. Just the seal of the Tao is indestructible after tens of thousands of years. Are they going to kill me? A glint of understanding flashed in Jiang Tian's eyes. Chapter 1256. At this moment, the imprints of the experts from the mythological era and the traces of the almighty experts from the ancient times reappeared. In essence, the immortal trapping Great Array recorded the various magical powers of the ancient great emperors and imprinted them in the world. To make an inappropriate analogy, the immortal trapping Great Array was like a huge video recorder that recorded the magical powers and great Tao of the ancient great emperors. However, this image was made up of terrifying thunder and energy. It even had some residual spiritual power and spiritual power. It was extremely powerful. Sush. Empress Hua's eyes were indifferent. She didn't say a word and suddenly waved the willow branch in her hand. Suddenly, endless thunder bloomed and zigzagged for dozens of miles. It was as blazing as a laser and as fast as lightning, hitting Jiang Tian. Sush! A burnt smell filled the air. The chest of Jiang Tian's real body was penetrated. Green smoke rose from it and it was charred black. With the wound as the center, densely packed cracks instantly appeared on Jiang Tian's jade-like body, which was like a precious treasure. He nearly shattered. Endless thunder and lightning hit Jiang Tian alone. His black hair fluttered like a waterfall. His dantian rumbled and thunder burst out from his body, merging with the thunder-slaughter divine body. He was almost made up of pure thunder and lightning. Thunder and lightning countered thunder and lightning. He operated the supreme thunder control technique. Even if his bones and tendons were broken, he immediately obtained energy from the thunder and lightning to repair his body. The myriad stone cauldron floated above Jiang Tian's head and urged the initial chaotic energy. It protected Jiang Tian while being baptized and refined by the sea of thunder and lightning. In the sky full of thunder and lightning, Jiang Tian's body was shining with precious light and divine splendor. It was constantly dissipating and reforming. Bathing in the endless thunder and lightning, it was refining his immortal divine body and baptizing the real body's divine consciousness in his sea of consciousness. It was the cauldron that he would use to prove his Tao after being tempered. After a while, the imprint of Empress Hua waved the willow branch and put away the thunder and lightning. She looked at Jiang Tian silently. Could it be? Jiang Tian suddenly thought of a possibility and his eyes lit up. However, he didn't have time to think about it. Because with a buzzing sound, the five-colored sky-mending stone shot out and suppressed Jiang Tian, who was in the air. Suddenly, endless light of calamity bloomed. The light of calamity was so powerful that even a tiny wisp of it could crush mountains and crush the earth. A powerful force of heavenly tribulation appeared between heaven and earth, instantly enveloping Jiang Tian. It was powerful enough to grind a nascent soul-stage cultivator into dust. This force was soundless, shapeless, and traceless, yet it was 10 times stronger than splendid landscape, and it was fierce and strange to the extreme. It was as if the gravity of the earth had suddenly increased by 10 times or even 100 times. Jiang Tian couldn't help but fall. He had to activate the tempest wings to flap crazily in order to support himself. It was as if the surrounding pressure had suddenly increased 10-fold or even 100-fold, threatening to grind Jiang Tian into dust. Pa. All the thick earth god suppressing chains in Jiang Tian's lower abdomen exploded. He had to gather the power of the 6 different god bodies to resist. But still he vomited blood. Do you have to kill me? I'm fighting for mankind. What's wrong with that? Could it be that you want us to be cowards for generations to come and curl up in this small world? Jiang Tian roared and his eyes became fierce. The 6 fake elixirs in his lower abdomen jumped at the same time. The 6 different god bodies gathered into one, which was close to the chaotic god body. Endless aura spread out from the 108,000 pores all over his body. He didn't hold back anymore. He let go of his limbs and flew up against the sky. He held the myriad stone cauldron and fiercely smashed it toward the 5-colored sky-mending stone. Clang! The loud noise was like 100 nuclear explosions. This was a great annihilation. Tens of thousands of rays of multicolored light shot out, and thunderbolts struck down. Mushroom clouds appeared in the sky, and the space was blasted apart. Spatial cracks snaked out like black lightning, and fragments of space slid down like glass. Swoosh! The 5-colored sky-mending stone was smashed thousands of meters away. All the mountain-like meteorites around it turned into dust and scattered in the air. The phantom of Empress Hua didn't say anything. She just raised her hand and took the sky-mending stone back. She instantly retreated dozens of miles away and looked at Jiang Tian silently. At the same time, another human-shaped thunderbolt appeared in the distance. It seemed to be moving slowly, but it was actually moving very quickly. That person was riding a giant goat with curved horns on his head. He carried a fishing net on his back and held an 8 trigrams plate in his hand. He gently shook it. Suddenly, the simple and majestic black stone tablet shone with a dark light and released a powerful suction force. It was like a black hole in the depths of the universe, swallowing everything. It caused the surrounding space to distort and time to stop. Even the light became bent and colorful as it drilled into the stone tablet. It could even swallow the rays of light and couldn't escape. That stone tablet was a kind of dark matter that was extremely rare in the universe. It was very mysterious and had great divine powers. The swallowing divine powers was just one of them. Fuxi the Great has made his move. Yu Wendon said in shock. I want to tear apart the sky that binds me and the human race. I want to break through the earth and destroy the planet. I want to revive the spirit Qi. I want Earth to become the new core of the universe. I want the human race on Earth to become the most powerful race in the universe. I want the flowers of human civilization to bloom in the universe. I want the human race to expand to every galaxy. I, Kong Techu, have made this vow today. No one can change it. If the ancient gods stop me, I will slaughter all the gods in the world. If the ancient emperors stop me, I will destroy all of you. Jiang Tian's red eyes were filled with an unyielding fighting spirit. He roared like a dragon and shouted like rolling thunder. It shook the 9 heavens and 10 earths and spread across the entire Huaxia. Many people trembled and felt uneasy. He soared into the sky and fought crazily. He used all kinds of secret arts and didn't even hesitate to exhaust his true essence to forcefully use the laws of the immortal and divine worlds. After a lot of effort, he finally escaped the swallowing divine powers of the dark stone tablet. He soared into the sky again with a bloody mist and fought against Fuxi the Great Seal. His every move had the power to shake mountains and tear apart the sky. His punches and kicks seemed to be able to move mountains and fill oceans. He destroyed many of his ancestral weapons, tore apart the fishing net, and destroyed the 8 trigrams. It wasn't that Jiang Tian was arrogant or that Jiang Tian didn't respect the ancient emperors. It was just that he felt a kind of pain, the pain of not being understood, and a kind of deep loneliness. He had been misunderstood by many when he revived the spirit Qi. Many people thought he was a jinx and that he would lead Earth to eternal damnation. But he understood. The universe was like a dark forest with danger everywhere. It wasn't a declaration of peace when you cut off your own hands and feet, cut off your own path, and use the immortal trap array to envelop Earth and turn it into a dead planet with no spirit Qi. In other words, this declaration of peace wasn't effective. The resources of the universe were limited. The strong had an endless desire to become stronger and expand. The strong would eliminate all advanced and backward civilizations and search for all possible habitats. If the immortal trap array was effective, if this declaration of peace was effective, Earth and the entire solar system wouldn't have turned into a dead zone 8,000 years later. Those who fell behind would be beaten up. This was a universal and unchanging truth. Only the strong could control their own fate. The weak could only wag their tails and beg for mercy. Even if they had a single breath left, their lives and fates were still in the hands of the strong. If they wanted you dead, you would die. There was no choice. In the face of threats, the only way was to become stronger and reach a higher level of civilization. There was no other path to take. Even more so, they couldn't give up on their own future and fight for the great Tao. All of a sudden, a sword radiance swept across the heaven and earth and slashed toward Jiang Tian's waist. There was nothing but a sword in the sky. Blood dyed the sky. Jiang Tian's intestines and stomach were torn apart. Dozens of his bones were broken and his body was charred. He staggered backward for dozens of kilometers. It was the seal of Emperor Zhongli. He was wearing a golden crown, a chain armor, and a heart-protecting mirror. He was standing on a giant golden dragon 100 feet long, holding the heaven-extinguishing sword that had once cut the ancient path in the universe. He was as tall as a mountain and his robe was fluttering like a flag. His face was handsome and his eyebrows were as sharp as heavenly sabers. His eyes shrouded Jiang Tian and were full of disdain. "Emperor Xing, you should understand me." Tears of blood rolled down from Jiang Tian's eyes. He smiled sadly and he said with a bitter smile, "You were the one who stopped the invaders back then and made the plan to wander the deity ground. But why are you attacking me? Are you trying to train me and temper me? Or are you testing me?" That was the first time he had shed tears of blood since he returned to Earth. He was too anxious. Qing'er and his daughter were in danger. "You think too highly of yourself." Emperor Zhongli roared in anger. He swung his sword at Jiang Tian like a lightning bolt. "I'm not training you, not tempering you, and definitely not testing you. We really want to kill you. You want to kill the ruins of deity? What's so great about the ruins of deity? What's so great about the twin stars of the South Gate? The real threat in this world isn't them at all. You can't do it. No one in this world can do it. You don't know how powerful the invaders are." His heaven-extinguishing sword was faster and fiercer than the previous one. He attacked like a storm and roared with a hint of crying. "Compared to their civilization, we're all trash and bugs. You'd better live like a bug. Even the ancient virtuous sages can't do it. You think you can? Who do you think you are? Revive your fucking spirit Qi. Give up, give up, give up." Jiang Tian was beaten until he was dancing in the air like a marble. He rolled and crawled. His skin was lacerated and his bones were broken. His divine blood stained the sky and he almost looked like a bloody gourd. Suddenly, Emperor Zhongli swung his sword and sent Jiang Tian flying dozens of kilometers away. Then he raised his hand and grabbed Jiang Tian. He held Jiang Tian in his hand like an ant and shouted angrily, "Are you going to give up or not? If you can't, I can. If you don't want to do it, I'll do it." Jiang Tian roared. His energy center roared and 6 divine bodies burst out. They flashed and attacked Emperor Zhongli from all directions. Chapter 1257. It was a chaotic battle, and the scene was shocking. If the world knew about it, everyone would be stunned. Lightning flashed in Lei Meng's eyes as he flapped his wings like a peerless heavenly blade. He held 2 purple lightning blades tightly and slashed down. The Sheng Emperor's imprint had no choice but to let go of Jiang Tian and fight back with the peerless heavenly sword. The Earth Dragon divine body was not afraid of the lightning. Its huge tail covered the sky as it slammed Sheng Emperor Zhongli's waist from the side. Sheng Emperor was forced to retreat a few miles away. Dragon binding rope, sky blasting fist. The Azure Wood divine body was like a world tree that propped up the heavens. It was filled with the aura of the azure wood, like the rosy clouds. The branches all over the sky turned into dragon-binding ropes that bound Emperor Sheng. Even if they were burned to pieces by the thunderbolts, they would not be pushed back. Another part of the tree branches coiled into a mountain-like fist and smashed the sky, smashing Emperor Sheng away for tens of miles. Sheng Emperor groaned. His lightning body dimmed and crackled with sparks. His eyes flickered as if he was in pain. "Little kid, do you want to slay a god? Do you want to fight with the ancient monarchs? You're still too weak." Emperor Sheng swung Absolute Heaven Sword, and it descended like a waterfall that was like a silver river. Swish. He merely flicked his fingers 3 times to slash the Azure Wood divine body into 2. But in just 3 flicks of his fingers, the Gung Jin divine general had already arrived. Time slashes heavenly gods. The blood essence of the Gung Jin divine body surged. The Gung Jin divine body leaped forward and slashed at Zhongli's neck as if it could control time itself. More than half of Sheng Emperor's neck was severed. Broken bones, minced meat, and blood splattered out. Even a nascent soul expert would die under this slash. But this was not the real Sheng Emperor. It was just a Tao imprint formed by the remnant consciousness and lightning energy. It was lifeless and would soon recover. Grind your dog head off. Xianshui Great Millstone. The Xianshui Green Dragon opened its mouth and roared. It rushed forward and controlled a large amount of Xianshui to spin above Sheng Emperor Zhongli. Creak. Sheng Emperor's head was twisted a few times and his neck was twisted like a fried dough twist. "Brat, do you want to die?" In the void, another human-shaped lightning bolt strode out. He had the head of a dragon and the body of a human. He was 3,000 meters tall, imposing and mighty. The horns on his head were lofty, his eyes were like divine lamps, and his fist was covered in dense scales. He brazenly punched out, causing the scales of Xianshu Azure Dragon to fly off and spit out dragon blood. Rumble, rumble, rumble. He smashed through several peaks that were 300 meters tall in succession. Mushroom clouds soared up in the sky one after another, and only then did he stop when he collided with a May golden peak. He stared at Jiang Tian with a gloomy look in his eyes as he waved the dim Dinghai pearl in his hand. Instantly, cold winds from the 9 heavens whistled, and an extremely cold aura of the mysterious underworld suffused and surged. In the blink of an eye, 100 miles of space was sealed in ice. Jiang Tian and the 6 god bodies were frozen in the air. They couldn't even move their little fingers. This ice was dark black in color, but it was extremely transparent, like a black crystal. This was not the usual freezing, but some kind of powerful sealing and confinement magic power. Make molecular motion and even atomic motion disappear. Not even normal soul formation overlords could withstand it. They would be frozen to death. At this time, even the Thunder Dragon divine body, which was the most violent and fierce, was frozen in place with a shocked and frightened look in his eyes. The thunderbolts he spat out suddenly froze in the air like modern abstract sculptures. Not even a wisp of them could be activated. The Dinghai Pearl. It's one of the most precious treasures in the world, known as a peerless divine artifact. Its freezing power is among the top 10 in the universe. The energy of the ancient underworld inside is extremely cold. It can freeze everything, seal all Dharma power and vitality, and even freeze space to form a forbidden area. At this time, Jiang Tian looked sad, and there was a bit of desperation, indignation, and anger in his eyes. It wasn't that he wasn't strong. Even though his divine body had only reached the initial success level, it was already enough to intimidate an area deep in the universe. However, it was difficult for Jiang Tian to withstand fighting against 4 ancient thearchs alone, even if they were just marks of the Grand Tao. The 4 words, ancient thearchs, were enough to prove everything. During the Age of Legends, when overlords were everywhere, they dominated this world and might have even fought in the depths of the universe. They were extremely talented and stood at the top of all living beings. Even though Jiang Tian was strong, he had to start from the beginning after all. He was only a false core cultivator at the moment. The difference in power was too great. Besides, the 4 of them attacked one after another with Dharma treasures and divine artifacts from the ancient times. It was too terrifying. Kid, since you recognize this treasure, just give it up and destroy your own power. Don't try to recover spirit chi, don't try to become stronger, don't start a fight. Isn't it good to be alive? Why do you want to die? The mark of the Ao Emperor glared at Jiang Tian and roared. It was like a dragon roaring in the sky, shaking the entire Huaxia. Hm, ignorant kid, you want to cause a great change in the world and do things against the heavens. How dare you be disrespectful to your ancestors? You are courting death. Jiang Tian was almost exhausted. Even his Dan Tian was frozen. His true yuan did not fluctuate much. It was dead silent. Even his boiling blood had turned into ice. You want me to give up? I can give up. I can be an ant, a useless and weak ant. I can forget about the wonderful world outside. I can ignore the safety of the human race and the future generations. Everyone can just muddle along. But I can't let her die. He smiled sadly. Suddenly, Zhao Xueqing's gentle smile and her clear and gentle eyes appeared in his mind. The changes in the world are nothing to fear. The ancestors are nothing to fear. If the world wants to restrict me, I will break the cage of the world and change the world. If the rules of the ancestors are not correct, I will change the rules or even abolish them. I will break the idols and worship of the ancestors. Why should I care about the rumors of the mortals? I only want to have a clear conscience. His voice was getting louder and louder. Every word was getting louder and louder. The last sentence was already a roar. In the next moment, Jiang Tian's blood-red eyes flashed with murderous intent. A torrential battle intent swept out like an ocean. It could even penetrate the forbidden zone, causing the ancient monarch's marks to tremble slightly. 6 divine bodies, listen to my command. Sacrifice the fake cores. Return to 1. Sublimate to the limit. His eyes flashed with boundless determination. With a loud roar, cracks appeared around his body. He forcefully cast the last spell of the transcending divine 9 transformation art. All of a sudden, 6 fake dawn jumped out from the dantians of the 6 god bodies. Colorful Zhenyuan shot out like beams of light, interweaving with each other like a hexagram, surrounding Jiang Tian in the middle. Strands of colorful Zhenyuan gathered in Jiang Tian's dantian. Transcending divine 9 transformation art, fuse. At this moment, Jiang Tian gave up on forming the chaotic divine body and forced his way to the golden core in order to defeat the 4 ancient emperors' marks. With Jiang Tian's cultivation level, in terms of true yuan reserves, he could have reached the golden core cultivation level or even the mid-stage golden core cultivation level. In order to form the chaotic golden core and form the chaotic divine body, he did not hesitate to suppress his cultivation level and use the 6 divine bodies to bear the 6 fake cores. If he formed the golden core now, it would only be a defective chaotic golden core and an incomplete chaotic divine body. But after forming the incomplete chaotic divine body and golden core, it would be extremely difficult for him to form a complete chaotic divine body. He could destroy his golden core and cultivate from scratch. Or he could go against the heavenly Tao and reverse the divine body to separate the golden core. But the success rate was extremely low. The most likely possibility was that he would completely become an ordinary golden core, like a mortal body or the worst cultivator with mixed spirit roots. But for Zhao Xueqing, for the little life in her womb, and for Jiang Tian, he had no other choice. He could only do this. The moment the divine-grade fake cores were successfully sacrificed. Boom! A thunderous sound like a 1,000-foot tsunami was heard in Jiang Tian's dantian. The vast chaotic qi that seemed to have come from the beginning of the world soared into the sky like a giant curtain, turning into pillars of light that pierced through the heavens and the earth. Like peerless heavenly swords, they shot out in all directions. The beams of light flashed across the sky with an earth-shattering power, and the forbidden realm formed by the ancient underworld black ice cracked. With Jiang Tian as the center, giant cracks appeared in the dimension. Then, the forbidden realm was completely torn apart. Without the support of the fake cores, the 6 divine bodies fell to the ground one after another. They were covered in cracks like porcelain. Let's fight. On the other hand, Jiang Tian stepped out of the chaotic forbidden zone. His thick black hair flowed like a waterfall as he stared at the ancient virtuous paragons. His eyes burned with an unyielding battle intent. Come on. I'm going to break your necks and smash your heads today. Jiang Tian felt that there was endless energy in his body, as if he could crush the earth. He shouted and threw a punch. The sun and the moon immediately turned upside down and the sky was torn apart. The world was in chaos. At this moment, he was surrounded by boundless chaotic aura. He was like an ancient god that had split the heavens and earth apart, standing between the heavens and the earth. It was as if he could shake the sun and moon with just a wave of his hand. The forbidden zone created by the sea-suppressing pearl was like tofu, completely crumbling into dust. Even the vast and majestic aura of the ancient underworld had completely vanished. Chapter 1258. Taoist Tai Chu, stop. Ao Sovereign suddenly raised his hand and shouted. It's too late to stop now. Jiang Tian bellowed in anger. With a single move, he crossed the distance of dozens of li and arrived in front of Ao Sovereign, punching out a punch. Instantly, the chaotic true essence filled the air and formed layers upon layers of giant waves. It was like the birth of heaven and earth, and all living things were born. It formed a fist the size of a mountain and pulled out streams of air turbulence as it struck out. I told you to stop. Let's have a good talk. Ao Sovereign shouted in fear as he threw out a punch. The scaly giant fist was completely made of thunder and lightning, and it clashed with Jiang Tian's Zhenyuan giant fist. At the same time, the Dinghai pearl shook. The endless ancient underworld aura behind him erupted like a volcano as it tried to form a forbidden zone to freeze Jiang Tian. Boom! Loud explosions could be heard coming from the depths of the sky. Their clothes fluttered behind them. The ancient Ming Qi that gushed out from the sea-calming pearl behind Ao Sovereign was blown away by Jiang Tian's fists like a tree that was snapped in half by a strong gust of wind. Such insane true essence. Not even a soul formation realm cultivator could withstand it. Ao Sovereign's mark twisted in pain. Although it was just a mark, it could still be felt. Of course, he would be in great pain as his fist was shattered. At that moment, he was still not a true chaotic golden core, but he was already a substandard one. Although his level was slightly lower, it was still something that these ancient emperor's Tao marks could not withstand. 10,000 swords piercing body. Jiang Tian suddenly turned his fist into a palm and waved his hand. The chaotic true essence gushed out violently. Swoosh! The true essence turned into 10,000 flying swords that were as thin as a cow's hair and shot towards Ao Sovereign's ribs. The numerous flying swords grew larger in the wind, piercing, lifting, chopping, pointing, collapsing, hanging, lifting, wiping, sweeping, parrying, intercepting, circling, swimming, drilling. The sword moves and sword momentum were swift and fierce, endlessly changing. Ao Sovereign's expression changed drastically as he retreated. Sometimes he would fly close to the surface of the water, sometimes he would roll around like a donkey, and sometimes he would soar into the sky like a dragon. His movements were extremely strange as he dodged the attacks of the flying swords. Great overarching heavenly stars palm. Jiang Tian took a step forward, causing the space around him to explode. His speed was inconceivably fast as he soared into the sky and slammed down a palm strike onto Ao Sovereign. Behind Jiang Tian, it was as if the chaos had just been created. Billions of stars were floating up and down, flickering. Every single star had transformed into a vast amount of palm energy. Rumble. It was obvious that this palm was coming down from the sky, but there were palm prints everywhere. Layers upon layers of giant palms covered the sky. Ao Sovereign was instantly engulfed by the gigantic palm. Countless explosions shook the heaven and earth, and hundreds of mushroom clouds rose into the sky. Everything was in chaos, and it was impossible to see his figure clearly. Moments later, the palm force disappeared and the Ao Sovereign floated in the air with his face facing down as if he was too ashamed to face anyone. In the sky, many ancient emperors looked over and exchanged glances. After a while, Suerenshur, who was holding the flame in his hand, murmured, "He seems to really have the chaotic divine body. Is there really such a body in the world?" Divine body? If it hadn't been created, of course it would only be a legend. But now that it has been created, you still don't believe it? The Fuxi Great Emperor said with tears in his eyes, "He really can create the chaotic divine body. This is the body of a god of creation. This is the person we want to choose, the Son of Heaven. There is hope for our ancestral land. We have waited for tens of thousands of years, and finally, it is here. He has obtained the dancing green wood, the vermilion bird light flame, and my chaotic origin stone cauldron. This person is really lucky." Emperor Zhongli exclaimed and even felt a little envious. What? Jiang Tian was slightly taken aback. Suddenly, his heart skipped a beat. It would have been fine if Emperor Shing didn't mention it, but now that he did, Jiang Tian suddenly felt that his luck since his rebirth was too good. Although the spirit chi on earth had dried up, and although his path of cultivation had been bumpy and he had encountered many enemies, his luck had always been good. He had actually managed to find 6 types of divine body materials on Earth and the surrounding dimensional worlds, which were like weeds compared to the vast universe. The probability of this happening was extremely, extremely low. It was as if there was an invisible hand that was controlling his fate, fiddling with the trajectory of his life, and bringing him a lot of luck. However, this thought just flashed through Jiang Tian's mind. He didn't think too much about it. After all, he was facing a few primordial emperors at this moment. It was as if he was facing a great enemy. How could he be distracted at all? The energy of Emperor Was Mark turned into a lightning finger that extended dozens of kilometers away. It poked Ao Huang, who was floating in the air, and said, "You're not fighting anymore? Are you convinced?" "Don't bother me. How can I be convinced? I'm just a little confused. Let me think, how did I lose?" That palm strike of his was really strange. Ao Huang lay on his back in the void, motionless. His face was facing the ground as he said grumpily, "Little friend, reverse your dantian and disperse your substandard chaotic golden core. Who knows, you might be able to recreate the real chaotic divine body and golden core. We can have a good chat. This is really a misunderstanding." Seeing Jiang Tian striding towards him, Emperor Zhongli was shocked. He took a few steps back and quickly waved his hand. "Substandard chaotic divine body? I can still beat you." Jiang Tian stepped into the air and said with a bleak face, "I thought that since I only have a substandard chaotic divine body, the ancient emperors could still fight me. Who knew that you guys are so weak? Come. Isn't your absolute heaven sword able to cut through everything? Let's have a taste of my True Yuan giant sword today." He condensed his vast True Yuan into a giant sword that was 1,000 meters long. He swung it like Pan Gu swinging a giant axe to split the chaos. Boom! Emperor Zhongli's giant sword was sent flying. He was then suppressed by Jiang Tian. He ran away pathetically as he screamed in pain. I'm just a mark that executes Emperor Sheng's will. I'm not him. I'm not an evil person. Why do you have to force me? Emperor Hua, save me. Xuerenshi, what's with the smile on your face? Emperor Sheng's mark was shattered again and again, but it was reformed again and again. It was drilling in and out of the space cracks without any power to fight back. Aya, Tai Chu's punch seems to be from Buddhism. Is that the Thousand Buddha hand? It's so domineering. He even knows how to hover in space. His true yuan is terrifying. It's 10 times thicker than ordinary true yuan. It can even explode suddenly and form a second, third, and fourth attack. Emperor Sheng is still too weak. He should be able to dodge it with the flickering light passing shadow. I can definitely dodge it. However, Emperor Hua and the others did not seem to hear it. They continued to point and comment on Jiang Tian. Xuerenshi smiled and said, Emperor Sheng, don't be afraid. As long as your soul is not scattered, you can still reform it after it's destroyed. Suddenly, Jiang Tian's soul devourer burst out and formed a Yin Hellgate, devouring more than half of Emperor Sheng's remaining soul. Emperor Sheng's mark was frozen on the spot. His face was as bitter as a constipated gourd. He opened and closed his mouth with difficulty and said, he even killed a mark. Too fierce. Seeing this scene, Xuerenshi was dumbfounded. He jumped and slipped away, retreating dozens of kilometers away. Oh my God, this guy has even collected soul devourers? His luck is too good. No, it's not as simple as his luck. His cultivation techniques are all real immortal cultivation techniques. They're even more powerful than ours. Emperor Hua showed an appreciative smile. But the next moment, her face darkened and she said with hesitation in her eyes, he may be a reincarnated body. But if the soul of this reincarnated body comes from a star race and is not of our race, it will be troublesome. Xuerenshi had just steadied himself when Jiang Tian was already approaching him. Xuerenshi was so scared that he trembled. He waved the torch in his hand and shouted, Heaven Fire Thunder Mountain. Numerous bolts of lightning leaped about like flames as they exploded towards Jiang Tian, rumbling as they ceaselessly swelled up in the sky. They were like layer upon layer of mountains that protruded from the ground, sparkling and translucent, incomparably gorgeous and enchanting, and they contained violent killing intent. Speed of wind and thunder. Jiang Tian's eyes were filled with excitement, and he couldn't help but let out a long roar. The wind and thunder wings suddenly appeared from his back, and with just a flap, his speed reached the extreme. His feet stepped on many flaming lightning mountains as he charged forward. Flying star sky shattering fist. Rumble. He opened and closed his fists and legs. As his body moved, many stars hovered around him. He looked like the god of creation. The starry river fell, and the chaos aura spread out, suppressing and shattering the heaven fire and thunder mountains. No matter how much the heaven fire and thunder mountains exploded, they couldn't hurt him. Xuerenshi's hands trembled in fear. This brat's mortal body was so strong that he could withstand his skills. He hurled the lightning torch at Jiang Tian, but it was shattered by Jiang Tian's vermilion bird feather saber. The two of them kept on unleashing their secret arts, and they were locked in battle. Sheng Sovereign Zhongli's body was not solid enough. He was fluttering in the air and he said angrily, Swen, can you do it or not? Quickly, capture him and take back my soul. Emperor Hua, what do you mean by race? Be it humans, monsters, or demons, those who are of one mind are our race. Ao Sovereign jumped up like a carp and came to Emperor Hua. He shouted impatiently and the two of them immediately started a heated debate. Sheng Sovereign Zhongli looked at Fuxi Monarch and stammered, Brother Fuxi, you're the best at gossiping. What do you mean I'm the best at gossiping? Are you scolding me? That's called divination. Fuxi Monarch's face turned pale. Emperor Shi, you are good at divination and formation deduction. You are the best in the universe. Can you find out where his weakness is? Then you can help Xuerenshi to get his soul back. Emperor Zhongli said respectfully. Of course he has a weakness. There is no such thing as a flawless technique in the world. Fuxi monarch stared at Jiang Tian as he cast the 8 trigrams. The patterns of the 8 trigrams flickered as they revolved, regrouped and merged together. He was rapidly calculating Jiang Tian's qi reserves and circulation. He was also trying to predict the next step of his skills and techniques to find out his weakness. The amount of calculation was unparalleled, but Fuxi monarch seemed to have a lot of energy left. He was calm as if victory was within his grasp. He was the creator of the 8 trigrams, an expert in array formations and divination. He was the best of his generation. With this small 8 trigrams, he could derive all kinds of things, from the big ones to the small ones such as the origin and fate of people and objects. There was nothing that he didn't know. "I've found the weakness." Fuxi monarch was immersed in his calculations and suddenly he smiled proudly. Suddenly he looked down and saw that Jiang Tian had broken through many of Sueren's skills. Then, Sueren rushed up to Sueren and punched out. Chapter 1259. His weak point is below his ribs. It's changed. It's at his back. No, it's at his neck. It's at his neck. Fuxi monarch shouted. "Where is it? Can't you be more reliable? Talk to him through your divine psyche. You're too slow." Sheng Sovereign Zhongli was so angry that he wanted to cry. However, Suerenshi's reaction was extremely fast. The flaming long saber slashed towards Jiang Tian's neck at lightning speed. Sovereign Hua, who was arguing with Ao Sovereign, glanced over and clapped her hands. She smiled and said, "Not bad, little Suezi. Let's see how arrogant this brat is. What's so great about the chaos celestial body? It is, after all, an incomplete chaos celestial body." Sheng Sovereign Zhongli laughed out loud while the other ancient emperors snorted proudly. Ao Sovereign only cared about arguing with Sovereign Hua anxiously. "I was also a monster back then, but didn't I fight for the humans? Not of my race? What do you mean?" "Qi." Suerenshi's flaming long saber slashed through Jiang Tian's neck and his head flew out. Just as Suerenshir was about to stop, he said, "You've been beheaded by me. I've defeated you." Suerenshir. Suddenly, Jiang Tian's body swayed and his head popped out again. Then 2 more heads popped out from his neck. The 3 heads and 6 arms swung around and slashed towards Suerenshir. Suerenshir smirked and said, "You're so happy after beheading one? There's more." Pung ping pung. Suerenshir was struck by the attacks and he was sent flying like a rag doll. In the end, he fell headfirst into the air and stopped moving. 3 heads and 6 arms? That's the skill of the monster race. The Ao Sovereign laughed. He cheered for Jiang Tian and said, "The monster race is indeed strong and domineering. Come, kill Sovereign Hua too." "Found it." Fuxi monarch kept the 8 trigrams and said proudly, "His weak point is at his dantian, the 3rd from the back of his spine. There's no way he can escape. Very steady. Too slow." Suerenshir wanted to cry. "I'll go beat that brat to death." Shenong walked out with a hoe in hand. He was in high spirits as he rushed towards Jiang Tian. Come, let's spar." The Fuxi Great Emperor hesitated for a moment, then suddenly slapped his head and shouted, "Wrong, wrong." His loophole was fake. The chaotic physique was too heaven-defying. There were countless dantians in his body. At the very least, it was not just one dantian. He was purposely setting up a maze. "Wait, let me calculate again. This time, he definitely won't be able to escape." "Stop talking." Shenong flew backward with his hair disheveled. Blood-shaped lightning bolts kept spurting out from his mouth as he gritted his teeth and shouted, "I knew you were wrong the moment I attacked." Emperor Sheng and Zhongli rolled their eyes and were speechless. Fuxi the Great Emperor coughed awkwardly and glanced at the many great ancient emperors staring at him. "What do you mean? It was you guys who asked me to do it. Don't worry, I won't be wrong this time." "Stop fighting. If you continue, his golden core will be completely solidified and it will be too late to disperse his true yuan." Emperor Hua said angrily. "Tai Chu, our little friend, we are not really trying to kill you. We are just testing you. Only the divine physique can defeat that powerful enemy. Please forgive us for being too harsh. Ao Huang clasped his fists and threw the Dinghai Pearl to Jiang Tian. He then shouted with an expectant tone, "Dinghai Pearl! My little friend, use it to cultivate the dark ice physique. You must cultivate the chaotic divine physique." Emperor Sheng and Zhong Li also threw the quieting heaven sword to Jiang Tian and said, "Stop fighting. Stop messing around. I'm not fighting anymore. Where's my soul? Give it back to me. I have already shown my sincerity." Are we really not fighting anymore? Holding the Dinghai Pearl and the quieting heaven sword tightly, Jiang Tian finally confirmed that these great ancient emperors were not hostile to him. He pointed at the golden lake in the middle of his forehead and the Yin gate appeared. The gate opened and a faint soul was spat out. Then he stomped his right foot and activated the Transcendent 9 transformation art. Now that he had just gathered 6 divine physiques, what he created was naturally not the real chaotic divine physique and the corresponding golden core. However, if the golden core was formed for too long, it would be difficult to separate and reconstruct it. The longer the time, the lower the probability of separation. Jiang Tian could not wait any longer. His dantian rumbled and the chaotic golden core that had just taken shape shook and dispersed. It turned into 6 different true yuan and formed 6 false cores. Thank goodness. The Transcendent 9 transformation art is originally a heaven-defying art. I can't believe it managed to reverse and disperse this chaotic false core. Otherwise, all my previous efforts would have been wasted. Jiang Tian heaved a sigh of relief and quickly injected the 6 false cores into the 6 divine physiques. Boom! The 6 divine physiques woke up and turned into true yuan under the guidance of the Transcendent 9 transformation art and entered Jiang Tian's body. Here is the darkest stone tablet. Use it to forge the dark physique. Fuxi the Great hesitated for a moment, then lifted his hand to erase the immortal will imprint on the stone tablet and threw it to Jiang Tian. Jiang Tian raised his hand and grabbed. The stone tablet shrank to the size of an inkstone and fell into Jiang Tian's hand. This treasure is extremely rare. It can help me cultivate the dark shadow divine physique. Jiang Tian looked at it and found that it was carved out of a piece of darkest material. His eyes brightened. This material was extremely rare in the universe. It could change shape at will and swallow and hide everything. It was the best hiding Dharma treasure. Even the mighty figures of the deity realm and the divine-level civilizations could not find it with their vast immortal will. Fellow cultivators, I can't go empty-handed since I've already prepared gifts for Tai Chu. But what should I give him? Emperor Hua frowned and pondered for a moment. Suddenly she smiled and said, "Right, the Kuan Peng blood essence." She took out an item. It was a blood bead about the size of an egg. It was glittering with blood essence. This is the monster core of the first Kuan Peng born in the chaotic world when this world was first created. This Kuan Peng had an endless lifespan and was powerful. It was as famous as Kong Xian, the Peacock King. He did evil in the ancient continent and was killed by me. I took his blood essence and formed this pill. This pill can help you cultivate the Kuan Peng body. You can control the wind and clouds, be fearless of all the wind and evil spirits, and control space. Then she flicked her finger and sent it to Jiang Tian. It's the Kuan Peng blood essence, the first Kuan Peng in this world. It must have reached the soul formation level. It's enough for me to form the wind divine physique. Jiang Tian connected the 3 treasures and was overjoyed. With the 3 treasures he could cultivate the wind, ice and dark divine physiques. Then, forming the chaotic divine physique would be a piece of cake. Tai Chu, when you form the golden core or even the nascent soul, please come back to this world if it's convenient. We'll help you go through the tribulation as the will of heaven. Emperor Hua said gently. They had been gone for a long time and no one knew if they were dead or alive. However, the great Tao imprint still existed in this world and represented the will of heaven in this world. The so-called tribulation was the tribulation that the will of heaven would send every time a cultivator broke through the cultivation level and sensed the connection between heaven and man. For example, a cultivator was like a child born in a world, but the child's power was getting stronger and stronger. He even wanted to break free from the restraint of the will of heaven and earth and surpass this world. Of course, the world was unwilling and had to send a tribulation. However, Emperor Hua didn't mean to kill Jiang Tian with the thunder tribulation. Instead, she wanted to refine Jiang Tian's golden core or nascent soul to repair the flaws and increase the probability of forming the chaotic golden core. Thank you, Emperor Hua. Thank you, seniors. When Jiang Tian heard this, his face turned solemn as he respectfully bowed and cupped his fists. Although he had reached the top of Hongmeng in his previous life and might be a bit more powerful than Emperor Hua and the others, Emperor Hua was one of the creator goddesses. However, Emperor Nua was one of the goddesses of this world after all, and many ancient sages had given him such precious treasures. For his sake, Jiang Tian naturally didn't need to put on airs in front of them. We're going to leave. Emperor Hua nodded and sighed. She said with a hint of kindness, My young friend, the fate of Earth is in your hands. Jiang Tian quickly said, Seniors, please wait. Who were the overlords who invaded Earth in the ancient times? Were they the Annihilators? You know about the Annihilators too? Many of the great ancient emperors were shocked. Jiang Tian became serious and his heart sank. He was sure that the Annihilators were the ones who had invaded the deity ground and the ancient Earth tens of thousands of years ago. They were very troublesome to deal with. Even the divine-level civilizations had to be careful when dealing with them. No wonder even the ancient emperors didn't dare to activate the deity trap array for fear of attracting them. However, Jiang Tian had become a deity emperor in his previous life and was only one step away from becoming a god in Hongmeng, so he didn't take it to heart. In his previous life, Jiang Tian had returned to Earth after a few hundred years, and Earth was still there, which meant that the real crisis would come at least a few hundred years later. Jiang Tian didn't believe that he couldn't come up with a way to deal with them in the next few hundred years. Among the many marks of the Great Tao, only the mark of Empress Envihua did not seem surprised. She smiled and said, I told you that Tai Chu must be the reincarnation of an overlord from another planet. Looks like we've found the right person. As long as he's with the people of this world. In my previous life, I was still Jiang Tian and almost became a god in Hongmeng. However, I died at the last moment and was reborn. I wasn't possessed or reincarnated. Jiang Tian told them the truth. However, after hearing what he said, how could this be? The ancient sages gasped and looked at each other in shock. They couldn't believe it. Chapter 1260. You almost became the deity of Hongmeng? That's too powerful. You've been to the realm of the true deities. Many of the great ancient emperors were shocked. Then, they looked at each other in confusion and frowned. Were you still yourself in your previous life? That's extremely rare. It's amazing. Did you reverse time? Reverse time? How much Dharma power does that require? Not even normal true deities can do that. However, they were just imprints of the great path after all, not their real bodies. Their intelligence couldn't compare with their real bodies. They couldn't figure it out at the moment. It was time to say goodbye. In the end, Jiang Tian asked, Is your original body still alive? Emperor Sheng, I've seen the guards of the southern gate. Are they waiting for your return? Jiang Tian felt a bit sad when he thought of the guards of the southern gate who were still fighting for tens of thousands of years. What's the point of our real bodies being alive? A hint of sorrow appeared on the Sheng Emperor's imprint as it said, I can't feel the existence of my real body anymore. Even if he's still alive, I'm afraid he's already gone to a very, very far place. Besides, we've had different experiences and thoughts since tens of thousands of years ago. He's always been a coward. I don't know what he's become. Jiang Tian's eyes flashed as he fell into deep thought. Many thoughts appeared in his mind. Emperor Sheng's imprint was like a clone. It had its own consciousness and had stayed in the deity trap array around Earth. It had witnessed and even participated in the battles between the human deities and the invaders in the ancient times. Emperor Sheng, who had started the journey in the deity ground, was a great strategist, but he was a fugitive at heart. He had even abandoned many of his people when he was wandering in the deity ground. He took a flying ship and changed his route, so he didn't go to the southern gate. Could it be that he was really a deserter? I can't answer that question either. The Ao sovereign's imprint tapped on Jiang Tian's shoulder, interrupting his thoughts, and said bitterly, "Because my imprint was left by Ao Huang before he wandered in the deity ground. The connection between me and Ao Huang's real body became weaker and weaker. However, I can be sure that my true self, Ao sovereign, is dead." Jiang Tian raised his eyebrows and stared at the Ao sovereign's branding mark. After all, they were imprints of the great Tao. Even if they relied on the immortal trap grand formation and had energy pouring into them, tens of thousands of years was already their limit. They would probably only be able to hold on for a few hundred years at most. If Ao sovereign was already dead, his divine soul could no longer be replenished, and his collapse would be inevitable. The Ao sovereign's mark smiled brightly and said proudly, "But you don't have to be afraid. We don't have to be afraid. We have you." His branded feet and legs began to scatter like ashes, turning into pure, unconscious energy and returning to silence. However, his eyes still flickered with a bright light. With a deep hope, he smiled and said, "On the path of cultivation, one should be constantly improving and becoming stronger and stronger. You latecomers should surpass us." The Fuxi Great Emperor's silhouette also began to float. His voice was hollow but powerful, resounding and powerful. "Cultivator Taichu, if it weren't for the arrival of planet destruction, the existence of the deity trap array and the wandering deity ground, Earth would have become a bright cultivation planet and the most powerful cultivation civilization would have been born. That's the dream of all the ancient emperors, but we didn't achieve it. So, it's up to you." The imprints of the ancient emperors were connected and they spoke at the same time, turning into a torrent of voices that resounded in the sky. Billions of people could hear it clearly even without the use of live streaming software. "Just like you said, our ancestors aren't enough. There's nothing impressive about our ancestors, seniors, and ancients. What we can't do, you can do it. Fellow Taoist Grand Primordium, go and revive your spiritual energy. Go and draw your sword towards the vast starry sky. Go and slash your saber towards the heavens. It's time for the races on Earth to take back the glory that belongs to them. This new era depends on you." When Jiang Tian descended from the sky, he looked like a mess. His hair was messy and his clothes were tattered. His chest was stained with blood and his skin was burnt. But after seeing this scene through the military's live broadcast, billions of people around the world couldn't underestimate him at all. They were in awe. He's someone blessed by the ancient gods. Even the ancient gods are convinced by him. He's the only savior. The observer posted on the forum. "Follow Kong Taichu and fight for mankind. Show your sword to the sky. My 42-meter-long saber is thirsty and thirsty again." Zhang Shisan, the loyal fan, shouted on Weibo with a funny picture. Nobody knew that he was in tears in front of the screen. That battle had been too difficult to win. Kong Taichu broke the deity trap array and the imprisonment of thousands of years. He's the hero of mankind. Comments were flashing in the live broadcast room. Many Weibo, forums, and Tieba servers were immediately overloaded. They had never thought that Kong Taichu would be so fierce in that battle. He killed the famous sects of the Preqin dynasty and even destroyed the 9 cauldrons left by Emperor Yu. He went against the heavenly tribulation and heavenly punishment, tore apart the deity trap array set by the ancient gods and broke the confinement of heaven and earth that had imprisoned mankind for thousands of years. He subdued the mark of the great way of the ancient emperors and was blessed by the ancient gods. He was called the Chosen One and the founder of the new era. Every single one of these 3 matters was a great achievement that could split the heavens and split the earth apart, and it shocked both the ancient and modern times. His achievements covered 1,000 generations and illuminated the ages. But Jiang Tian, in just a few hours, completed it all at once. The savior, Kong Taichu. The founder of the new era, Kong Taichu. The invincible, Kong Taichu. The most powerful person under the sky, Kong Taichu. Countless people gave Jiang Tian different titles to express their excitement. At Tianqing School, Jiang Zhixing, his wife, and many others heaved a sigh of relief. It was as if a stone had been lifted from their hearts. That's an ancient true god. My grandson defeated him and subdued him? Jiang Chang'ing was dumbfounded. His whole body trembled and tears flowed down his face. He still felt like he was dreaming. This battle was too dangerous. It could even be said that danger was everywhere. Anyone in this world would probably be reduced to ashes if they were caught in it. No one had expected that the destruction of the 9 cauldrons would trigger the deity trap array. No one had expected that the deity trap array would contain the mark of the ancient gods. But Jiang Tian had turned the tables and defeated them. He had also convinced them with his strength. Yes, Grandpa. Jiang Tian won. Zhao Xueqing smiled with tears. She couldn't hold back her tears. She was connected to Jiang Tian's divine sense, so she knew Jiang Tian's every thought. When facing the mark of the 4 ancient emperors, Jiang Tian was in a desperate situation and almost wanted to give up. But Jiang Tian's deep love for her made him fight to the death and create a miracle. The outcome has been decided. The momentum has been formed. In the Pentagon of the United States, Deputy Minister Keynes, who was in a military uniform, stood straight and waved excitedly. The danger of this battle is far beyond our expectations and imagination. I'm afraid that the hidden forces around the world have been deeply awed by Mr. Jiang's unparalleled power. There's no need to fight anymore. During the time when Jiang Tian was in seclusion, the Tianqing school had joined forces with the Pentagon to investigate many hidden forces. But these hidden forces refused to join the Myth Alliance. They were obviously leaving themselves a way out. They didn't want to go to war with the ruins of immortality and might become the first group to lead the way. But now, this battle had shocked the world. Jiang Tian's power had suppressed the world. These forces might be taken down by Jiang Tian without any effort. Yi Karen, Ying Su, and many other cultivators of Huaxia were excited. Once the Myth Alliance was established, it would establish the unshakable position of Huaxia, Sidoni, and Tianqing School, or to be exact, Jiang Tian in the era of the Spirit Qi recovery. Around Mount Amei in Huaxia, many famous preaching families and reclusive royalty looked at the sky in despair and turned into statues. How is this possible? Yu Wenden, Ji Muxian, and the old monk of Huangjue Temple were in a daze. Run! The old monk of Huangjue Temple screamed and led the Zhu family of the Daming dynasty to escape on a cloud. Go back to your own dimensional spaces. Yu Wenden howled miserably and panicked like a stray dog. At this moment, the regret in his heart couldn't be washed away even with all the water in the world. Originally, Jiang Tian was very sincere and respected the major forces, hoping to form a joint conference with them to work together to revive Spirit Qi and start a new era on Earth. But he looked down on Jiang Tian, who was just a commoner. Either he didn't revive Spirit Qi or he revived Spirit Qi. He should be the leader of the Myth Alliance. He didn't want to leave the mountain at all. He thought that he could rely on the immortal trap array to compete with Jiang Tian with some juniors, but he didn't expect that many of his disciples would be killed. He came out of the mountain in anger and took revenge. He even used the splendid mountain river cauldron and the immortal trap array, but he ended up like this. At this moment, the famous preaching families had been utterly defeated. The disciples of the great Xia, Yinshang, Great Zhou, and the other 4 families were in despair. Their trump cards, the splendid mountain river cauldron and the array spirits of the immortal trap array, had been destroyed by Jiang Tian. Even the ancient grand cultivators were subdued by Jiang Tian, so they had nothing left to rely on. Kang Teichu would definitely eliminate the root of the problem. There was no way that he would let them go. They split into 3 groups and soared into the sky. Like the roar of a fighter jet, they rushed toward their respective dimensional spaces and small heavens. Everyone please wait. My lord Kang Teichu is famous. Those who are loyal to him will be spared. Suddenly, a shadow flashed across dozens of miles and stopped in front of the army of the Yinshang family. It was ancestral patriarch True Dragon. Thousands of soldiers trembled when they heard his terrifying dragon Dharma form. They hurried a few steps forward and knelt on the ground. The leaders of the elders, ministers, and generals begged. We have no blood relationship with the Yin family. We only became enemies with Senior Taichu because we were bewitched by him. We know we're wrong. We're willing to follow our savior and fight for the recovery of spirit chi and the beginning of a new era. We won't hesitate to sacrifice our lives for him. Only a few disciples of the Yin family were left standing there, dumbfounded. Wasn't it too fast to betray them? Well, since you're willing to pledge your loyalty, then seal your cultivation and wait for the verdict. Ancestral Patriarch True Dragon nodded. Then, a disciple of the Yinshang family stepped forward and said, "We're also willing to pledge our loyalty to the Taichu World Venerable. Do you think you're worthy?" The True Dragon Patriarch looked at them with disdain. He snorted and slammed his palm down. Instantly, 100-meter-long giant palm covered in scales came down, crushing many disciples of the Shang dynasty into powder and blood. The famous families of the Yinshang family were annihilated. Chapter 1261. Yu Wenden was the fastest. He was already 100 miles away in a flying military vehicle, but he was still stopped by Lian Sheng. "You still want to run?" Lian Sheng roared with a ferocious look on his face. "Bastard! You're an eminent monk, but why are you following Kong Teichu? Get out of the way and you might have a chance to live." Yu Wending scolded with a scowl. He was weak and couldn't fight anymore, but there were still a few golden core overlords in the sect who couldn't be underestimated. A bunch of bastards. If you didn't control the deity trap array, you wouldn't have the chance to show off in this world. Lian Sheng roared and raised his hand. "How dare you challenge my master? Today, I'll show you what you're made of." Boom. Beside him, 1,000-jong-tall mountain, the 10,000 Buddha Apex Mountain, rose from the ground and was actually pulled over by him. It flew far above the army formation and then smashed down from the sky. Many disciples yelled in despair. "That's terrifying. Is Kong Teichu's servant so powerful? He threw a mountain and destroyed a city. This kind of strength, even if placed in the ancient times, can be called a god." Yu Wenden and the other overlords looked up in shock. Billions of people in front of the screen were dumbfounded and they screamed in fear. 1,000 feet tall? What did that mean? It was 3,000 meters tall, which was equivalent to half of Mount Everest. However, Lotus Tathagata had forcefully grabbed the entire mountain and smashed it down from the sky. This power was no less terrifying than a small planet crashing into Earth. If it hit, it could wipe a large city off the face of the Earth. Boom. Within the Yu family's army, the dantians of several Golden Core realm elders rumbled. Vast amounts of true yuan shot up into the sky, creating many strange phenomena as they tried to support the mountain peak. But it was useless. Bang! The mountain moved dozens of miles and smashed into the Yu clan's army, sinking into the ground. The earth shook like the skin of a drum, and the entire Huaxia shook violently. After the 10,000 Buddha domes smashed down, be it Golden Core or Foundation Establishment, all of them were smashed hundreds of meters deep into the ground. They all exploded and turned into meat paste, completely disappearing from this world. What was more shocking was that the Buddhist temples, Taoist temples and houses on the 1,000 Buddha peak weren't affected at all. None of them were killed. Lian Sheng Tathagata had frozen them with his Dharma power. What an overbearing power! Even before Yu Wending died, his face was still filled with unwillingness and astonishment. He didn't expect that he would die in the hands of an old servant of Jiang Tian. He didn't even have the qualifications to die in Jiang Tian's hands. Lian Sheng raised his hand and summoned a 1,000-foot-tall mountain. With one strike, the Yu family of the Qin dynasty was annihilated. 10 minutes later, ancestral patriarch Takong caught up with the descendants of the Jiang family and killed all of them mercilessly. A quarter of an hour later, old freak Mingi caught up with the remnants of the Ji family. The Yellow Spring River stretched across the sky, filled with death qi, mercilessly strangling and devouring all life. Countless bodies turned into pus and white bones, and their souls were devoured, becoming vengeful souls in the Yellow Spring. Seeing that the 4 major sects were destroyed, the old monk of Huangjue Temple led the disciples of the reclusive royalty to flee in all directions like headless flies. Suddenly, A figure appeared in front of them. He was wearing armor and holding a long halberd. He stood in the air like a god of war. Ying Su. We are all members of the Guardians of Huaxia. We fought side by side. You are the leader of the Reclusive Royalty Alliance. Please let us go. Yes, we were bewitched by the Preqin dynasty. We know we are wrong. Zhu Shaochen, Li Guangkol, and other members of the royal family felt their hearts sink. Some of them were stunned and their faces were pale. Some of them tried to flatter Ying Su. How dare you say you are from the Guardians of the Guardians? Who are you guarding? Who are you fighting for? Huaxia? Are you the people? Ying Su shouted. His eyes were almost spitting fire. We are all members of the Reclusive Royalty Alliance. Why do you have to be so aggressive? The old monk of Huangjue Temple shouted. Now, the leader of the Reclusive Royalty Alliance, Ying Su, is no more. There is only the second-generation disciple of Tianqing School, Ying Su. Ying Su's eyes were full of fighting spirit. His face was full of killing intent. He held the long halberd and charged forward. The old monk of Huangjue Temple only lasted 3 rounds before his stomach was pierced by Ying Su's halberd. Blood stained the sky. You turned the true chi of a martial artist into true essence. That's fast. Tianqing School is really something. The old monk of Huangjue Temple fell to the ground, his body twitching. He murmured in disbelief before he died. Ying Su, you are too cruel. Seeing this, Zhu Shaochen was furious. He and the other members of the Zhu family of the Ming dynasty charged forward with swords and knives. Back then, in order to curry favor with the prestigious sects of the Preqin dynasty, you disregarded your comrade in arms and joined forces to kill me. Our friendship is severed. Ying Su was infuriated. His roar sounded like rolling thunder, and his berserk Shen Yuan swept out like a raging wave. His aura was frightening, and his long halberd was like a heavenly pillar that swept across the sky, smashing Zhu Xiaochen's brains and exploding their bodies, killing them instantly. Oh my God! He only went to Tianqing School for a few days, and his progress is so terrifying. Li Guangkol and the others were terrified. They were so scared that their legs were cramping. Like little white rabbits meeting a fierce tiger, they fled. Before Ying Su went to Tianqing School and met Jiang Tian, Zhao Xueqing and the others had taught him and helped him reach the limit. His strength had increased by at least a few times. Li Guangkol and the others were no match for him. Swoosh! The long halberd pierced through the void like a bolt of lightning. Li Guangkol and the others were pinned to the mountain peak like a gourd skewer. Then the long halberd shook. Li Guangkol and the others who were still alive exploded into a rain of flesh and blood, scattering on the ground. I made him my enemy in front of everyone. With Kong Teichu's vengeful and ruthless personality, how could he spare me? Ji Muxian was anxious. He led Ji Mingchuan, Yue, and a few other disciples to escape in the direction of the Kunlun sect. Suddenly, a figure in a Taoist robe appeared in front of them and blocked their way. It was Yi Karen. Her face was cold, like a fairy descending to the mortal world. She said coldly, "Senior Muxian, I want to challenge you." "What did you say?" Ji Muxian was stunned and his face was pale. Ji Muxian felt that after today, Jiang Tian would definitely settle the score with him. After all, he had injured Yi Zhantian. As for Yi Zhantian, he was Jiang Tian's right-hand man. Today, he had once again denied Jiang Tian before the battle, belittling him to the point that he was nothing. However, he didn't expect that the reckoning would come so soon, and in such a way. His disciple challenged him. "I said, I want to challenge you. If you win, we'll write off all our past grievances." Yi Karen's eyes were filled with murderous intent. She wanted to avenge her father. "Unfilial person. I'm your master. How dare you disrespect me like this?" Ji Muxian said hatefully. "I've already left the Kunlun sect and joined Tianqing School." Yi Karen threw out her Kunlun sect disciple nameplate and sneered. "If that's the case, there won't be a problem if I challenge you again, right? I'll give you 3 breaths of time. Either you throw down your sword and admit defeat, or you accept my challenge." Yi Karen said arrogantly. Ji Muxian was forced into a corner and had nowhere to retreat. He showed a trace of contempt and said hatefully, "Fine, I accept your challenge. I won't show you any mercy. I'll let you know how weak you are." He pinched his fingers and the sword on his back jumped up. However, a cold sword aura suddenly erupted from Yi Karen's waist. It was so fast that Ji Muxian didn't have time to react. Ji Muxian only felt a cold and hot sensation in his chest. He lowered his head and realized that his dantian had been shattered. Blood gushed out like a fountain and his cultivation was gone in an instant. Yi Karen had already sheathed her sword. Her face was as cold as ice that couldn't be melted even after 10,000 years. "How dare you break my dandan and cripple my cultivation?" Ji Muxian was dumbstruck. His eyes were wide open and his whole body was trembling violently. "You and my father were just having a martial arts competition. However, you suddenly killed him and crippled his cultivation and broke his dantian. Today, I'm not going overboard by treating you like this." Yi Karen said coldly. "Ha, I see." Ji Muxian laughed bitterly with tears in his eyes. His hair was disheveled and it sounded even worse than crying. He never expected that he, the dignified sect leader of the Kunlun sect, would have such an ending. His cultivation was crippled by a disciple. With his cultivation crippled, he definitely couldn't be the sect leader of the Kunlun sect anymore. He originally saw Jiang Tian as his enemy. However, in the end, he realized that Jiang Tian never saw him as an opponent. He was actually crippled by a disciple. At this moment, his regret couldn't be washed away even by the 3 rivers and 5 seas. If he hadn't harbored evil intentions or listened to Li Wuji's advice and didn't make an enemy out of Jiang Tian, he wouldn't have ended up like this. He staggered into the depths of the forest. He felt that the world was so big but there was no place for him to stay. As for Yi Yue and Ji Mingchuan, they were trembling in fear. They supported Ji Muxian and walked away silently. They didn't dare to reprimand Yi Karen. They were no match for Yi Karen. More importantly, Yi Karen and the Yi family had Jiang Tian, Tianqing School, and Myth Alliance behind them. Suddenly, Ji Muxian stopped and asked in a deep voice, "Yi Karen, what kind of sword technique is this? It can actually break my Kunlun sword manipulation technique." Tianqing School announced the basic sword technique. "Actually, I didn't enter Tianqing School," Yi Karen said coldly. "I see." Ji Muxian smiled bitterly and spat out blood. His body was on the verge of collapse. He swayed a few times before he stabilized himself and staggered away. The confinement effect of the immortal trap formation was removed. Many disciples of Tianqing School could use their cultivation to their heart's content. The counterattack began. They drove straight into the grotto heavens and secret realms that resisted the Myth Alliance. They completely suppressed and subdued the remnants of the Preqin famous sects and reclusive royalty. Then, the scene of Lotus Tathagata destroying the Dragon Pond Cave on Mount Baitu and Jiang Tian subduing the Ghost King of Mount Mang was also released. These scenes shocked Huaxia and the world. Humans all over the world were trembling. Kong Teichu's disciples were too strong. They were definitely the strongest force on this planet. The recovery of spiritual energy had been achieved. Nothing could stop them. Chapter 1262. The scene of Jiang Tian tearing the deity trap array apart and subduing the ancient sages was already 100 kilometers in the deep space. Ordinary people couldn't see it, but the near-Earth satellites of China and the United States military had seen it clearly. It was also reported by the Watch Me live streaming platform and many media outlets, and was presented to billions of people around the world. In an instant, Jiang Tian became famous again. Everyone could no longer ignore his existence. For the sake of their own selfish interests, they inverted black and white and poured dirty water. Many people thought that the recovery of spirit qi was a mistake and that Jiang Tian would bring Earth into a place of eternal damnation. Now, they were convinced by Jiang Tian after seeing the mark of the ancient sages. Who would raise a different opinion? Great! Well done. We won. Kong Teichu will be remembered in history after today. No one can stop the great plan of the recovery of spiritual aura. Countless people in Huaxia were excited. Especially many of Jiang Tian's friends, such as Shen Lu and his wife, Iris and her sister, Zhang Yilin, Lu Yiting and others, were so excited that they jumped out of their chairs and waved their fists. Jiang Tian's political and business forces in Huaxia, such as Jiang Tian's Zhang Jinghua family, the Ling Nantang family, and Special Envoy Shen, were originally cruelly suppressed and unstable. Now that Jiang Tian had turned the tables and released all the detainees, the charges were immediately dismissed, and the crisis was all resolved. Not only that, rumors said that Tang Weimin had hopes of becoming the central government, and the Zhang Jinghua family was about to become one of the top political and business families in Yanjin, overlooking Huaxia. No one could stop their momentum. This is what it means when a man achieves the Tao. Even his chickens and dogs will ascend to heaven. Alas, what did Zhang Zhonghua do to deserve such a position today? Many political and business observers who knew the inside story shook their heads and sighed with mixed feelings. There's nothing we can do about it. After the Spirit Qi revival, the logic of the whole world will change. Cultivation will become the third cornerstone of human civilization alongside technology and economy. Tianqing School and Kong Teichu were too important. The Zhang family, the Tang family, and the Shen family have all followed the right people. Someone's gaze was focused as he gave an explanation. However, there were others who looked as if they had lost their parents. It was especially so for the political and business families who supported the Preqin dynasty and the reclusive royalty to fight against Jiang Tian. They were all staring at the TV with their mouths agape. They shivered like quails in the cold wind. Originally, they were full of wisdom and confidence. After all, the foundation of the Preqin famous families was too deep. They thought that they could break the dominance of Jiang Tian's family and get a share of the profits in the process of the recovery of spiritual aura, but they did not expect such an ending. Sigh, I didn't expect Kong Teichu's strength to be so terrifying. After today, there will be no place for my family. A political boss who lived behind the scenes was so scared that he died of a heart attack on the spot. Many of his disciples wailed in grief. However, Jiang Tian did not have the time to pay attention to these ants. They were never real enemies, nor were they qualified to be Jiang Tian's enemies. More than 10 hours had passed since Jiang Tian tore open the immortal trap formation. Peace had returned to the spirit attraction valley of Mount Amei. The huge spirit gathering array disk and spirit creation well were being built in an orderly manner and were gradually installed. The many marks of the ancient great emperors in the immortal trap formation had returned to dormancy. The Preqin famous families and the reclusive royalty had been killed, suppressed, and intimidated. Jiang Tian, who had already changed into a white robe, sat on a huge rock. He played with the dull absolute heaven sword, which did not have any aura fluctuations at all. Around him, the 4 nascent soul stage old monsters and disciples stood respectfully. This sword was used by Emperor Zhongli. It had once cut open the ancient star path and cut through the Milky Way. Jiang Tian now had some understanding of the ancient star path. It was made up of large-scale transmission arrays installed on huge stars. Emperor Zhongli's heavenly connection was to wield this sword and cut through the stars. However, according to the information Jiang Tian had obtained, Emperor Zhongli did not have the strength to cut through the stars with a swing of the sword. He relied more on the power of this sword. Immortal weapon. It's far more powerful than a true artifact or a spirit treasure. Jiang Tian was shocked. This sword was too mysterious. Its energy was completely hidden, but its power was extremely powerful and had already entered the category of immortal artifacts. The god-beating whip, the yellow axe, the deity-tying rope and the golden dragon scissors were only quasi-true artifacts. They were like scrap metal compared to this treasure. Even the splendid mountain river cauldron paled in comparison. With Jiang Tian's current strength, his power would increase tenfold with this sword. He would be able to cut open the sky and wipe out a white city. Normal nascent soul stage grand cultivators would not be able to withstand it. When Jiang Tian formed the chaotic golden core, the power of this sword would be even more unimaginable and terrifying to the extreme. This sword can be my main sword. I can give the 9 flying swords I got from the sword vault to Qingya. Jiang Tian thought. Then Yi Tianren bowed and said, Master, Lu Shang, the ghost king of Mount Mang, the dragon demon of Mount Changbai and many famous families and the reclusive royalty of the Qin dynasty are here to join the Myth Alliance and sign a divine soul contract. All right. Jiang Tian put the sword into the sky-swallowing demon gourd and nodded. Greetings, Lord Taichu. Lu Shang, the lord of Hejian, knelt on the ground and bowed. Greetings, Lord Taichu. The Yu family is willing to join the Myth Alliance and pledge our loyalty to you. We will fight for mankind until the last drop of our blood. The deputy lord of the Yu family knelt on the ground and trembled in fear. His face was pale and his legs were wet. Then the Yin family, the Ji family, the Jiang family and the current leaders of the reclusive royalty and the dragon guardian lineage came and bowed as if they had seen a god or a demon. These leaders had gone through many checks and investigations. They were quite capable and were willing to join the Myth Alliance loyally. The core members of the famous families had been killed, but there were still many branches and affiliated families. They were also a force to be reckoned with. Greetings, Lord Taichu. All the demons in the world have surrendered and are willing to sign a divine soul contract with Lord Taichu. In the end, even the demon king of the heavenly lake of the Whitehead Mountain brought by Sujuan, the weasel, the white immortal hedgehog spirit and other demons to kneel before Jiang Tian. Congratulations, Lord Taichu. You have suppressed the famous families of the Pre-Qin dynasty and conquered the ghost cultivators and the demon cultivators. The Myth Alliance has finally taken shape. Congratulations. The famous families of the Pre-Qin dynasty have ignored the general situation of the world for their own interests. They deserve to be killed. I, Li Wuji, will be the first to support you. Li Wuji stepped on the cloud and bowed deeply to Jiang Tian with a flattering face. As for Ji Muxian's cultivation being destroyed, he didn't even mention it. This scene shocked many people. Many people thought that the Kunlun sect would definitely take revenge after Ji Muxian was beaten up so badly by Jiang Tian. They didn't expect such an outcome. Jiang Tian only nodded slightly. Everything was understood without words. The 9 elders of Hongmeng. Greetings, Lord Taichu. Suddenly, rumbling sounds could be heard as 9 streaks of light tore through the sky and shot over. Golden Core Cultivators. How is that possible? Does Hongmeng want to fight with the Tianqing school? Are they trying to stir up trouble again? This aura was unusually vast and fierce. Huang Linger and the other disciples were shocked and uneasy. Even the 9 living fossils of Hongmeng are here. Even Li Wuji was shocked. Hongmeng was one of the most mysterious and powerful forces in Huaxia. It had been dormant for countless years, and it was said that its strength was comparable to the famous families of Kunlun and the Pre-Qin dynasty. Legend had it that they were all people of the mountains and had no connection with any sects or dynasties. They only fought for the common people. However, they didn't do anything in this world-shaking dispute and remained strangely calm. At this moment, they suddenly came out of seclusion, which made people feel uneasy. A few old men slowly walked over. Some of them were disabled, some had broken limbs, some were blind, and some were mute. However, each of them had a powerful aura like a dragon or a god, which was superior to Li Wuji's. Were you injured by the immortal trap formation or by the mark of the great ancient emperor? Jiang Tian stood up and asked with a serious expression. Yi Tianren trembled and rushed over. He knelt on the ground and said with tears in his eyes, Master, you've finally come out of seclusion. I can die without regrets after seeing you come out of seclusion. We're just a bunch of old fools. We're not like you and Tai Chu, who have already broken the dimensional world. We don't deserve your kneeling. The leader of the group was an old man with a broken arm. He looked rough and heaved a sigh. His true essence burst out from his wrists and turned into a hand to help Yi Tianren up. He looked at Jiang Tian and showed some admiration and respect. He bowed deeply, touching his wrists without hands, and said respectfully, Brother Jiang, I came from a mountain village in the Ming Chongzhen dynasty and created the pig slaughtering knife art. After reaching the sky immortal level, I felt the existence of the immortal trap formation. Within a year, I reached the golden core level and tried to tear the immortal trap formation apart, but my hands were cut off by the array spirit. Everyone was shocked. The people of the Ming Chongzhen dynasty were already 500 years old. They were really living fossils and old monsters. I'm heaven-stealing legs, a thief. He stole Wu Zetian's mirror, Zhao Fian's golden plate, Li Shimin's sword used in the Xuanwu Gates rebellion, Zhu Yuanzhang's court chief who killed Lan Yu, Zhang Daoling's Yangping Ji Dugong seal. An old man without legs in a wheelchair also had the golden core level. He showed off with his saliva flying everywhere. Don't be cocky. Didn't the immortal trap formation cut off your legs? Next to him, an old man with 2 giant axes on his back curled his lips and said viciously. Heaven-stealing legs immediately blushed and said angrily, "It was just a moment. I drank that day and my legs weren't nimble. Otherwise, the immortal trap formation wouldn't have been able to hit me. It's a dead thing after all. I'm Woodcutter." The old man with 2 giant axes had strong muscles and thick bones. The blood qi in his body surged like a river and rumbled, as if he were bowing to Jiang Tian. But Jiang Tian scanned with his divine sense and found that the old man's chest had been pierced and the edges had healed. His heart was only half of an ordinary person's and was severely deformed. The blood vessels were twisted and displaced, but it was still beating vigorously. Chapter 1263. Another golden core cultivator. I'm blind. 500 years ago and 500 years later, I can be considered the best pupil technique in the world. I heard that Brother Taichu has cultivated the purple lightning eyes. I wonder if you can compete with me. A skinny old man with a bamboo pole in his hand walked over shakily, revealing a fawning smile as he muttered to himself. Old man, can you stop asking for trouble? An old woman walked out and pinched his ear. Brother Taichu tore apart the deity trap formation and defeated the imprints of the ancient gods. Do you have what it takes? If not, then you're not as good as Brother Taichu. Putting everything else aside in terms of pupil techniques, this old man might not. Blind's face turned red as if he was determined to compete with Jiang Tian. Jiang Tian couldn't help but smile. He had heard of the 9 old men of Hongmeng long ago. They were a group of itinerant cultivators who didn't have any orthodoxy. They were even from humble backgrounds. However, all of them were extremely talented and had great understanding. They created their own cultivation techniques and were the strongest cultivators of their time. They were arrogant and unruly. They once attacked the heavens and the deity trap formation. They even fought against the imprints of the ancient emperors. Even though they lost, it was still a glorious defeat. Today, after seeing the number 1 blind old man with an eye technique so overflowing with battle intent and insisting on fighting with him, Jiang Tian knew that they were truly a group of interesting people. Celestial Leaf's personality was most likely influenced by them. This old man just wants to compete with Brother Taichu. Don't overdo it, don't overdo it. Before the blind man could finish, there was a sudden boom. Someone behind him punched him and sent him flying 1,000 meters away. The blind man's upper body crashed into the mountain wall like a missile. Only half of his body was left outside. He scolded, "My eyes are still bright. Spear God, how dare you sneak attack me? I'm Spear God. Greetings, Brother Taichu. Don't mind this old man. We're the 9 old men of the Red Alliance. We're here to join the Myth Alliance. Please take us in." The spear god was dressed in old armor and carried an iron spear on his back. His appearance was simple and unadorned, but he was filled with the iron-blooded aura of a soldier. He looked just like an ordinary soldier. Yi Tianren transmitted his voice. This spear god was from the Song dynasty. Back then, Yu Fei and the Yang family's spear techniques were imparted to them by him. In the middle of it all, he had to stop his lifespan several times to survive until now. He had been waiting for the day when the immortal trap Great Array would be torn apart. The news of the 9 elders of Hongmeng joining Kong Taichu and the Myth Alliance was spread, and the whole Tianqing school was in jubilation. Everyone was cheering. These are 9 true immortals of the Golden Core realm. In addition to the Demon Clan and the Ghost Cultivator, the number of Golden Core realm cultivators in Tianqing school can be counted on 2 hands. In addition, there are 4 giants who have formed their nascent soul. Yiren was in high spirits, his eyes sparkling. All the talents in the world have entered Tianqing School. No one can stop the 10,000-year plan of the recovery of spirit qi. Situ Xiao was full of pride. It's just that our status is even worse. We have to work hard to cultivate. Wei Feilong, Zhao Yuankuan, and Hua Qingtian looked at each other again. Their faces were solemn and they felt the pressure. Good. Welcome to the Myth Alliance. Let's recover spirit qi together and plant the eternal foundation of our earth. Jiang Tian nodded in joy. Suddenly, the golden lake on his forehead flashed, and the Soul Devourer's divine sense burst out. The Black Soul Devourer's divine sense was like countless tentacles, shooting and waving all over the sky. It drilled into the sea of consciousness of the Ghost Cultivator led by the Ghost King of Mount Mang, the Demon Dragon and other demon cultivators of the Whitehead Mountain, and the leader of the Preaching Sect and the Reclusive Royalty, establishing a divine soul contract. As for the 4 nascent soul realm old monsters and the 9 elders of Hongmeng, there was no need at all. They were originally extremely hostile to the ruins of immortality, and they had a deep understanding of the universe and the laws of cultivation. They were natural allies and very reliable. Under everyone's gaze, Jiang Tian flew to the top of the magnificent spirit-guiding formation, which had just been completed. He looked around and said in a low but powerful voice, "Everyone, let's go. The recovery of spirit qi is imperative. A new era is about to begin. Those who join the Myth Alliance or sign a contract will be my allies and comrades. In 3 days, many forces, especially those secret realms, will become the mortal enemies of mankind if they don't join the Myth Alliance. Kill without mercy." This scene was not only clearly heard by the people within 100 miles of Mount Amei, but also witnessed by billions of people sitting in front of the screen. The entire earth was silent at first. Then, earth-shattering cheers burst out from the valley of Mount Amei. In the end, the entire world was filled with jubilation. In the face of the imminent changes in the world and the threat of the coevolution of other species, people were a little hesitant and resistant at first. But during this period, they had seen how powerful the cultivators were. They were comparable to the entities, and many of their doubts disappeared. Who didn't want to become stronger? Who didn't want to stand on the top? Who didn't want to transcend this world? Humans all over the world cheered wildly for the coming era of spirit qi recovery. This was an unparalleled impact on the entire human race. The crowd was boiling like an ocean. Almost every large city was holding banners and building bronze statues of Kong Teichu. The news media was also broadcasting news about Jiang Tian and the recovery of spirit qi. Jiang Tian came to Yanjing, Huaxia, where the Guardians Alliance was stationed. He invited the heads of state from all over the world to hold the first preparatory meeting of the Myth Alliance. Representatives of the various cultivation sects and families in Huaxia attended. Even the heads of state and military representatives attended. At the meeting, Jiang Tian reiterated the purpose of the Myth Alliance. In short, under the premise that the apocalypse might come, all forces that could be fought for and mobilized on a global scale must be mobilized. The Myth Alliance was a global organization of cultivators formed to resist the invasion of the immortal ruins and the dimensional world. The Earth Defense Coalition Army was the secular government and military force. At present, the Myth Alliance has been joined by Tianqing School, Kunlun Headquarters, Preaching Famous Sects, Reclusive Royalty, Huaxia Guardians Alliance, and many other forces. Sitting high on the seat, with 4 nascent soul stage old monsters standing respectfully behind him, Jiang Tian's fingers gently clasped the armrest of the chair. His majestic gaze swept across the many cultivation powerhouses and military representatives of various countries. He said in a deep voice, "For the Myth Alliance, in order to resist the invasion of the immortal ruins and the dimensional world, in order to recover spirit qi, we can be said to be putting in all our effort at all costs." In fact, at present, not only had the powerhouses of Huaxia joined the Myth Alliance, but the remaining forces of the Buddhist sect and Brahmin in India had also joined. Liansheng Lao Ru came to the banks of the Nile River in India and displayed his miracles. The Brahmins and Buddhists were immediately shocked and worshipped him as a deity. They called him the Great Rulai and worshipped him. After all, the Brahmins came from the West Earth dimension and were part of ancient India. They were naturally close to him. But these things require the cooperation of all the countries in the world. In short, all the hidden forces in the world. There are only 3 paths to take. The first is to join the Myth Alliance, participate deeply in the recovery of spirit chi, and become part of the army against the immortal ruins and the dimensional world. But we can't ask all the creatures on Earth to be as fearless and willing to sacrifice as us. Even ants are greedy for life, and being afraid of death is the instinct of intelligent life. They can also not join the Myth Alliance, but they have to sign an agreement with the Myth Alliance and establish a soul contract with me to ensure that they will not betray the humans on Earth and become accomplices and guides of the immortal ruins. This is the second path prepared for them. But if they don't participate and are unwilling to sign the contract, it is clear that they have left a way out for themselves. They will be suspected of joining the immortal ruins and will be killed without mercy. Many heads of state and military representatives nodded. Jiang Tian's old friend, President Young of the European Union, smiled and said, "Your Excellency, the European Union will support the Myth Alliance at all costs. The Palace of Gods and the Holy See have joined as a whole." Jiang Tian nodded slightly to show his approval. In fact, the Atlantis civilization in the Atlantic Ocean, in a broad sense, also belonged to the European Union. But the two had no connection, so Jiang Tian did not force it. It was not within the borders of any country in the European Union, so Jiang Tian could suppress it at any time. Therefore, Jiang Tian did not need to mention this point. Then, Jiang Tian said with a faint smile, "But there are still some secret realms and forces that have not yet submitted. If Russia's Tunguska Demon Lake, the Egyptian pyramids, the Hanging Gardens and the Tower of Babel in the Mesopotamia, the Atlantis civilization in the Atlantic Ocean, and some foreign gods in the primeval forests of South America and Africa haven't expressed anything." As soon as these words came out, except for General Keynes of the Pentagon, who looked indifferent, the military representatives of various countries and even the experts of the cultivation world were shocked. Even if they were the top figures of various countries, they had never heard of these forces before. They immediately understood that this information should have been leaked to Jiang Tian by the Pentagon of the United States. Putin, the great emperor of Russia, glared at the wolf King Alexander who was present, and a trace of fierceness flashed in his eyes. There were many secret forces in the Tunguska Demon Lake that even the Pentagon did not know about. It was probably only the Wolf King who had revealed it to Jiang Tian. The Egyptian president's forehead was sweating, and he was on tenterhooks. Jiang Tian said unhurriedly, "I hope that all of you can give up your delusions. In the eyes of the experts hidden in these secret realms and grotto heavens, in the eyes of the foreign gods, human beings are like insects and ants. You have no bargaining chips at all, especially after the immortal trap array was torn apart. They are no longer bound and imprisoned, and can obtain the energy overflowing from the destruction of stars. They have begun to strengthen and evolve rapidly. The existing balance with the secular world has been broken, and they will become even more rampant and unscrupulous. In this regard, we can only suppress them by force and beat them until they kneel and submit. Although the Tianqing school is from Huaxia, we have the whole world and all of mankind in mind. We are willing to help all countries and lead the Global Defense Alliance to suppress them all. The premise is that all countries provide intelligence support and disclose all information about the secret realms and foreign gods. What do you think? Sensing Jiang Tian's cold and dignified gaze, the Egyptian military representative bowed and said, "Leader of the Taichu Alliance, the ancient gods of our country are sleeping in the pyramids. They once protected the pharaoh and the people. They have been the faith of our people for thousands of years. How can they be easily erased? I think there is a possibility of persuading them. Please give us some time." The Russian emperor continued with a smile, "Leader of the Taichu Alliance, the experts in the Tunguska Demon Lake have been in hiding for many years and have never interfered with the secular world. I think even if the ruins of immortality really invades, they should maintain a neutral attitude. However, if we force them to sign a soul contract, I'm afraid it will backfire and cause them to counterattack. Seeing that the Russian emperor had expressed his stance, the representatives of many other countries seemed to be emboldened. They all said that the experts in the grotto heavens and secret realms and the foreign gods would not easily come out. Even if they came out, they would still be the protectors of their people and country. There was no need for them to join Jiang Tian's mythological alliance or sign an agreement. Seeing this, Jiang Tian frowned slightly, and a sharp killing intent flashed in his eyes. Chapter 1264. While Jiang Tian was in seclusion, Jiang Tian had already sent Qin Yang and other disciples to reach an agreement with various countries. Many countries would support Jiang Tian in forming a global myth alliance to attack many hidden arcane realms. However, Jiang Tian had already broken the immortal trap formation and broken the shackles of many arcane realms and gods of foreign races. However, these heads of state were now scheming against him, going back on their word and making excuses. A cold murderous intent appeared in Jiang Tian's eyes. Ever since his rise, no one had dared to stand him up and go back on their word. However, Jiang Tian thought about it and finally hid the murderous intent in his eyes. He just smiled indifferently. Keynes was so angry that his face was livid. He slammed the table and roared, "You are too naive. You think that your gods are your protectors? You are gravely mistaken. They are not humans, nor are they of the same race. They will definitely not be of the same mind as us. You should rely on Taichu, Tianqing School, and the Myth Alliance. Moreover, have you forgotten the previous agreement? All countries in the world must support the Myth Alliance. There is only one Myth Alliance in the world. Aren't you building another mountain?" The Russian emperor straightened his back and said, "Your Excellency Keynes, just like Taichu is dedicated to protecting Huaxia, the arcane realm masters and gods of various countries will also protect the countries and people where they are. We support the recovery of spirit qi, but Taichu is too domineering and dictatorial to kill the gods of other countries. Especially when the defense coalition forces enter our country, it involves the issue of sovereignty. This cannot be ignored or backed down." Keynes pointed at the Russian emperor's nose and shouted, "You are so stubborn. If they start to attack you and your country's regime one day, I hope you won't ask the Taichu Alliance or the Global Defense Alliance for help. Our country is fully capable of dealing with this matter. You don't have to worry about it." The Russian emperor's attitude was tough and unyielding. I think the leader of the Taichu Alliance doesn't want to see the human alliance fall apart before the invasion of the ruins of immortality and the humans on Earth kill each other first, right? The Russian emperor said with a meaningful smile. The negotiations fell into a stalemate for a while. The representatives of each country insisted on their own views and quarreled endlessly. The conference room was noisy. Jiang Tian remained silent for a long while, then sighed and said, "How about this? You can ally with your gods, but you can also remain independent. However, I hope that you will be fully vigilant. Once they reveal their hostility, if you have the Kuelian system, immediately activate and kill them. If you don't, you can authorize the United States, Huaxia, and Tianqing School to use the Kuelian system to attack." After saying that, Jiang Tian flung his sleeves and walked out of the meeting room with an ashen face. The Russian emperor and the others smiled proudly and walked out of the conference room with their heads held high. Keynes quickly caught up with Jiang Tian and said anxiously, "They want to have their own mythological alliance to compete with the mythological alliance of the leader of the Taichu Alliance. After the recovery of spirit qi or the invasion of the ruins of immortality, they want to have independent command and decision-making power. If we let them do as they wish, the global myth alliance will go bankrupt. If the superbrain man of your country is still here, will the Pentagon easily submit to the myth alliance?" Jiang Tian said with a smile. Keynes smiled awkwardly. Next to him, Ing Su, who had been promoted to the leader of the Huaxia Guardians Alliance, said fiercely, "Grandmaster, why are you being polite to them? If they don't submit, just kill them." Jiang Tian said calmly, "If I were to kill these representatives now, of course, I would be able to forcefully form a global mythological alliance. However, The foundation of this alliance would be unstable. They would never be willing to submit to me. Leader, what should we do? We can't let our plan fail, right? Ing Su frowned and said with worry and indignation. Jiang Tian, tearing apart the immortal trap formation, had already freed these arcana realm experts and gods of foreign races. Their strength had greatly increased, and the recovery of spirit qi would further elevate them to the limit. Many forces had obtained great benefits from Jiang Tian, but now, they did not recognize or accept Jiang Tian's leadership. Even these secular officials who had originally agreed to it had now gone back on their word and refused to cooperate with the Myth Alliance. Jiang Tian risked his life to tear apart the immortal trap formation, but it had completely become a wedding dress for others. Don't worry. Jiang Tian's expression was calm as he said lightly, I said that the experts in those small grotto heavens, arcana realms, and gods of foreign races will definitely subvert their existing secular power and order. The Russian emperor and the others will definitely beg me to take action. And it will be soon. The arcana realms and the alien races won't have the patience to wait for me to recover spirit qi. They can't wait to show their sharp fangs. Hearing that, Ing Su's heart skipped a beat and her expression changed drastically. She said, according to the information provided by the Pentagon, there are arcana realm experts in those hidden arcana realms who aren't afraid of nuclear weapons. Won't those countries be in trouble? Won't the people be plunged into misery and suffering? Those who weren't afraid of nuclear weapons basically had to be golden core overlords. Once the overlords at this level took action, their power would be extremely terrifying. They could easily destroy tens of thousands of troops and destroy large cities. It's not our country. Why do you have to be so saintly? We haven't reached the level of a global community with a shared future yet. The internal conflicts are still fierce. Let those arcana realms do whatever they want. Jiang Tian was still smiling and a trace of coldness flashed in his eyes that made Ing Su's heart palpitate. Sure enough, as Jiang Tian had guessed, many arcana realms, small grotto heavens, and even the entire earth began to become restless. Countless arcana realms and arcana realms that had never shown up showed up and displayed their power. I'm OM, the King of Atlantis and the Lord of the Ocean. Please convey that the Atlantis civilization supports Kong Techu's recovery of spirit qi. We're willing to work with His Excellency Kong Techu to protect the human civilization. I'm going to pay him a visit. South of Spain, near the Strait of Gibraltar. Suddenly, the waves rolled and a fisherman on a fishing boat was shocked to see a giant city made of gold. It was bigger than 10 aircraft carriers combined. It slowly rose to the surface of the sea. The buildings in the city were exquisite. Many tall towers stood straight like peerless swords. The palaces were continuous and the roads were horizontal and vertical. The layout was reasonable. The walls of the buildings were engraved with beautiful patterns. There were strong waves of Dharma power that seemed to be able to absorb the spirit qi in the world. A stalwart man wearing ancient golden armor, a 7-star crown on his head, and a trident in his hand rose into the air like a dragon. He bowed slightly to the fisherman and said with a serious expression, I'm sorry, but I'm sorry, but I'm sorry. We're in charge of His Excellency Kong Techu's recovery of spirit qi. However, the Atlantis civilization is a lost civilization. We've been in seclusion for tens of thousands of years. We don't need to join the Myth Alliance. Please convey the message. We'll definitely convey the message to Tianqing School and His Excellency Kong Techu. The captain stepped forward and said with a trembling voice, Thank you. If His Excellency Kong Techu insists on forcing us, I, OM, will fight to the death with Kong Techu for my civilization. The king of Atlantis' gaze was as sharp as a knife. Then he, his many generals, and the magnificent city sank into the sea and disappeared. Oh my God! The pain in my body has disappeared. The rheumatism that has plagued me for more than 10 years. Suddenly, a sailor exclaimed, My scars are also healed. My broken little finger is healed. Everyone exclaimed. They had bathed in the divine light of the King of Atlantis and were cured of all their illnesses. This scene was captured by the fishermen and broadcasted on the media. BBC, Agence France-Presse, CNN, and the Associated Press were all the most influential media in the world. The world was in an uproar. In Plato's dialogues, it was recorded that the Atlantis civilization was extremely advanced and had a population of 1 billion people. It was one of the most powerful civilizations in ancient times. However, it was submerged by the prehistoric flood and sank to the bottom of the sea, never to appear again. Many historians and explorers had investigated the history of this civilization, but they couldn't find any evidence of its existence. Over time, many people treated this civilization as a false legend. Unexpectedly, they really existed and even wanted to join Kong Techu's myth alliance. This was too shocking. In the Bermuda Delta. Boom. Men and women with human heads and fish bodies appeared on the surface of the sea, attracting the media to interview them. They claimed to be the Sea Demon tribe and had occupied this place for many years. They refused to join the myth alliance and form an army of sea demons. If Kong Techu insisted on forcing them, they would fight to the death. Their leader was called the Sea King, and his name was Arthur. He had already transformed into a human with 4 limbs. He was tall and had blonde hair and blue eyes. He was handsome, but his whole body was covered with golden scales. He was the half-brother of the king of Atlantis, the Sea Lord Amu. Previously, he had fought many battles with Amu for the position of the Sea Lord. Arthur put it plainly. Previously, many plane crashes and disappearances around the Bermuda Delta and even around the world were caused by him and his people. This included the famous Titanic crash. Because humans had polluted the sea and overharvested, the living space of the sea demons was getting smaller and smaller. They had no choice but to kill. The civilization of the sea is completely different from that of the mainland. Since the Industrial Revolution, the sea has been severely polluted. Humans are decadent, degenerate, and shameless. They are not qualified to be the masters of this planet. Facing the cameras of the reporters, Arthur stood proudly on the surface of the sea. His eyes were arrogant and bloodthirsty. He roared. As a human, Kong Techu only represents the mainland civilization. He is not qualified to control the sea and the thousands of sea demons. But he actually gave me an ultimatum, which is already a great disrespect. I advise him to kneel before me and accept his punishment within 3 days. Otherwise, I'll surely start a great battle and annihilate the heavenly clear sect. When the news came out, the world was shocked. No one expected the Bermuda Delta to be so powerful and to declare war on Kong Techu. Chapter 1265. Between the 2 rivers, on the right side of the Euphrates River, the old site of Babylon. A giant tower appeared out of thin air. It was more than 10,000 feet tall and pierced through the clouds. It was completely built with huge black stones. Strange cuneiform characters were engraved on it, emitting a dazzling charm and brilliance. This tower was so tall that it seemed to be able to extend into the endless void. It was so magnificent that it could be compared to the sky. The Tower of Babel appeared. Then, the Sky Garden also appeared not far from the Tower of Babel. The Sky Garden was covered with vines. The fragrance of orchids wafted through the air, and the petals were as clear as jade. It was full of vitality. Among the flowers, there were countless men and women in white robes, emitting divine light. They were like real gods, flying in circles and chanting scriptures. It was like a celestial chanting and the sound of the great Tao. It was ethereal and otherworldly. Almost within a few hours, countless media arrived at the scene and filmed this strange and shocking scene. I am the descendant of the king of Babylon, the king of Assyria. An old man in a white robe, with a withered face and white hair, stepped out and floated in the air. His voice was as loud as a bell. My ancestors once rebelled against the true gods of the kingdom of heaven and experienced the prehistoric flood. My ancestors were terrified. They started to build this tower in 3000 BC to resist the disasters of the kingdom of heaven. But the kingdom of heaven thought that we were challenging their authority and tried to stop us. They sent an army of angels to kill us. We could only create the Sky Garden in the dimension world and hide completely. The Babylonian civilization valued freedom more than gold and gems. For freedom, we didn't hesitate to die and go to war with the kingdom of heaven. We didn't even want to surrender to the kingdom of heaven, let alone Kong Techu. The king of Assyria of Babylon hereby declares that the Babylonian civilization is independent and will never be a slave. We refuse to join the mythological alliance. He waved his hand, and a vast wave of magic power swept across. Suddenly, a towering mountain 100 kilometers away turned into dust and drifted away like ashes. He had completely wiped it off the face of the earth. This scene shocked everyone once again. According to the records of the Holy See, the first rainbow appeared in the sky after the flood. Then the true God of heaven came and said, "The rainbow shall be a sign of my covenant with the earth, and shall be a remembrance of my covenant with you and with every living creature of flesh and blood. And the flood shall no longer overflow and destroy all living creatures of flesh and blood." Then God made a covenant with the people of the earth by means of the rainbow that no flood shall destroy the earth. But the ancient Babylonians were very rebellious. They said, "There is no reason for our future and the future of our children to depend on the rainbow. We should do something. Even if the flood comes again, we will not be afraid." Therefore, they worked together to build the Tower of Babel, which was the city of Babylon. The city was prosperous and magnificent, piercing through the clouds as if it could reach the heavens. This infuriated the kingdom of heaven and the gods. They destroyed their beliefs and destroyed their unified language. They couldn't communicate with each other, so the heavenly tower was half destroyed. The image of the tower stopping halfway had a symbolic meaning in religious art. It meant that the arrogance of humans would only lead to chaos in the end. The so-called Babel meant chaos in ancient Hebrew. But no one expected that the giant tower and the sky garden had been built successfully. They were not defeated by the Holy See and the kingdom of heaven. They were just hidden in a folded space. If one were to say that the three secret realms were merely threats and warnings, then that would be the case. The Tunguska Magic Lake in Russia and the Black Pyramid in Egypt directly used blood and lives to show their protest and dissatisfaction. They provoked Jiang Tian with cruel killings. Boom! On the Siberian plateau, in the depths of the Black Magic Lake, which looked like the eyeball of the earth, suddenly, demonic chi rolled like dark clouds. The sorrowful sound of horns resounded through the sky. Black iron battleships, which were hundreds of meters long, rushed out of the lake like ancient battleships. They cut through the sky and rushed towards St. Petersburg at more than 10 times the speed of sound. On the battleships, a group of demons in black clothes and black armor were 5 meters tall. Some of them had wings on their backs, and some had 3 heads and 6 arms. There were thousands of demonic chi rolling around them. Originally, the Tunguska Magic Lake said that they were going to form a mythical alliance of Russia and cooperate with the government. Why did they suddenly attack? Kong Techu was right. These demons were indeed deceiving me. Putin, the Great of Russia, never expected that the other party would tear up the cooperation agreement between the two sides. He regretted it so much that he wanted to cry but had no tears. He immediately ordered the attack and announced the information about the Tunguska Magic Lake to the world. Russia's military strength was only second to Huaxia, the United States, and Sidoni. But even hundreds of supersonic fighter jets and nuclear weapons failed to destroy those black iron battleships. Russia's hundreds of thousands of soldiers formed a solid defense line like a great wall of steel, but it was torn apart by the demon army as easily as crushing dry weeds. The demon army occupied the Kremlin, and the Russian emperor began to establish a government in exile. The leader of the demonic army, who had 3 heads and 6 arms, beheaded the commander-in-chief of the Russian army. He lived in the Kremlin and announced his victory in front of the camera. He claimed to be the son of the demon king Tunguska, and his name was Ayu. The successive Tsars had to obtain his approval to ascend to the throne, and the leaders of all the major churches in Russia had to worship him. But he didn't want to pay attention to the mortals, so he didn't come out. Now that Russia had sided with Kong Techu and become enemies with the Tunguska Magic Lake, they were taught a lesson. Kong Techu, thank you for breaking the immortal trap formation, allowing our demonic nature and demonic energy to be completely unrestrained. We can finally start a massacre. The son of the demon king, Ayu, smiled sinisterly. I announce that the ancient demons have returned. Within 10 days, the governments of all countries, including Sidoni and Tianqing School, will come to the Tunguska Magic Lake to worship the demon king. Otherwise, I will kill all the humans. In the end, under the Great of Russia's request for help, Hua Xia released the Kuelian and destroyed the demonic ships, killing many of them. However, the demon king Ayu escaped, and according to statistics, tens of thousands of Russian soldiers and civilians still died in the war. Not only that, but a huge black pyramid suddenly appeared among the pyramids of Egypt. It was 10 times larger than the original Great Pyramid of Giza, and the aura of death was surging and rolling. Countless mummies tore off their shrouds, dripping with corpse oil. They flew into the sky and burrowed into the ground, marching toward Cairo. These mummies were like dried corpses at first, only skin and bones. But once the battle started, they could immediately devour blood energy, and their bodies swelled up. We are the slaves of the Annihilator in the ancient times. After sleeping for 10,000 years, we finally waited until the immortal trap formation was broken. We can finally wake up. Thank you, Kongtidu. He will become my most loyal slave. A high priest who claimed to be an ancient Egyptian god flew out on a stone coffin. Some of them had dog heads and human bodies, while others had eagle heads and human bodies. With a wave of his hand, tens of thousands of people died. Wherever he passed, white bones were left. At the same time, in Japan, a giant snake with 8 heads and 8 tails rushed out from the mountains. Its head was as big as a mountain, and its body was 1,000 feet long. It destroyed a city and ate thousands of Japanese self-defense forces members, forcing the Japanese prime minister to bow down and worship it. They didn't buy the Kuelian system, nor did they join the Global Defense Alliance. They secretly asked Hua Xia and the United States to release the Kuelian. In the end, the Kuelian was released, and the Yamada no Orochi's intestines were smashed, and it jumped into the sea. But many people guessed that it didn't die and would come back again. In addition, evil spirits appeared in the Golden Temple in South America, the rainforests in Africa, and Southeast Asia. They wantonly slaughtered people and declared their resistance to the Myth Alliance. For a moment, the world was in chaos. Billions of people trembled and felt uneasy. The secret lands took the initiative to attack. The gods of humans and alien races fought to come out and resist the Myth Alliance. Even nuclear weapons can't kill them. Is humanity really going to face a catastrophe? The immortal trap has just been torn apart. Many gods and demons of alien races have come out. Are they attracted by Kong Techu? Where did Kong Techu go? Why hasn't he come out? Is he injured? Or he can't fight anymore? Someone asked on the internet in despair and pessimism. It immediately caused a lot of discussion. Yes, since Jiang Tian came down from the sky of Mount Amei, he suddenly disappeared from everyone's sight and never appeared again. At this time, the United Nations and the Earth Defense Alliance had released a lot of top-secret information. It turned out that these hidden forces had existed since ancient times. They were extremely powerful and could fly faster than the speed of sound. They were as strong as mountains and could easily tear apart tanks. In ancient times, people used to live under their huge shadows like insects and became their food and sacrifice. They gradually went into hibernation until planet destruction and the immortal trap enveloped the world and Earth's spirit chi declined. In human history, there were many so-called military exercises and nuclear tests in modern times. Many of them were to kill them, but some of them could withstand nuclear weapons and could not be killed. But the existence of nuclear weapons at least gave humans a bargaining chip. With the power to deter them, the two sides gradually reached a certain balance. But now that the immortal trap had been torn apart, the fastest to gain power was not the humans on Earth, but the gods of the secret lands and alien races. And once they woke up, the current balance would be brazenly broken. Humans on Earth would fall into a lot of danger and even desperation. Therefore, the most important thing for Jiang Tian to do before reviving the Earth was to deter these alien races and beat them until they completely surrendered. But unfortunately, Jiang Tian's suggestion was rejected by many heads of state led by Putin. When the news came out, the world was shocked. It turns out that those terrible alien races in the legends are all true. Why did Putin reject the suggestions of the Myth Alliance and Kong Taechu? Stupid. These terrible monsters are not even afraid of nuclear weapons. If we don't kill them, we're doomed. Only Kong Taechu can suppress them. Billions of people around the world were trembling and looking anxiously at Jiang Tian's back, hoping that Jiang Tian could come out of the mountain to suppress the many overlords. But they didn't know. At this time, the Russian emperor, the president of Egypt, the prime minister of Japan and the others had already arrived at the Mount Ame dojo in Huaxia. They knelt in front of Jiang Tian's living room and begged with tears in their eyes, "Savior, please save our country and our people." When the Earth Defense Alliance was established, why didn't you open the relevant information about Tunguska? During the Myth Alliance preparatory meeting, why did you refuse to let the Tianqing School and the Global Defense Alliance enter Tunguska? When the demons of the Tunguska Demon Lake appeared, why didn't you release the Kuelian immediately? A cold question came from the depths of the living room. The Russian emperor lowered his head in shame and was silent for a long time, unable to say a word. You don't want to say? You don't want to admit your mistakes? What does your Russian business have to do with me? Get out. Jiang Tian laughed. Chapter 1266. After the establishment of the Earth Defense Coalition Army, the Coalition Army had requested to make the information about the Tunguska Demon Lake public, but it was rejected by Russia. At the preparatory meeting of the Myth Alliance, Jiang Tian once again asked the students of Tianqing School to enter the Tunguska Demon Lake, but it was once again rejected by Russia for interfering with their sovereignty. Just like India, Putin and the other heads of state were arrogant and did not know the horror of the many secret realms. Before this, Jiang Tian had repeatedly reminded them, but not only were they not vigilant against the many secret realms, but they also thought that they could rely on and cooperate with them. They treated Jiang Tian and the Myth Alliance as outsiders. They were afraid that if they joined the Myth Alliance, they would lose their power. They were very unhappy with Jiang Tian's many proposals and requests. At this time, after causing a large number of casualties, they shamelessly came to Jiang Tian to suppress them. How could Jiang Tian not be angry? Putin trembled all over, gritted his teeth, and said bitterly, "In fact, every czar and president knows about the existence of the devil race. They are the descendants of the extraterrestrial experts who invaded Earth in ancient times. They are very powerful and have committed heinous crimes. But we think that tens of thousands of years have passed, and both sides should have put aside their hatred. They should be a part of Earth. I want to unite with them and let them become part of the Myth Alliance and the Earth Defense Coalition Army, so..." "Bullshit." Jiang Tian slapped the armrest of the chair and scolded harshly. "You want to join forces with them and use them as a bargaining chip for your Russia's Earth Defense Coalition Army to fight for the right to speak in the Mythical Alliance. You even fantasize about setting up Russia's own mythical alliance to stand on its own and fight against me, Jiang Taichu. After they sent out their troops, you still had fantasies and only released nuclear weapons. You didn't dare or were unwilling to release the Kuelian." Jiang Tian's face was full of mockery as he said coldly, "But you didn't expect that. But you didn't expect that they didn't care about joining forces with you at all. In their eyes, you are just an ant. I know I was wrong. I can take the blame and resign, but the Russian people are innocent." Under Jiang Tian's power, Putin couldn't bear it. He trembled with fear and begged with tears in his eyes, hoping that Jiang Tian would take action to save the Russian people. "Have you forgotten our agreement?" Jiang Tian's eyes were cold as he shouted angrily. "Before I broke the immortal trap spell, everyone had already reached an agreement that the authority of the Earth Defense Coalition forces and the Myth Alliance was above everything else. The interests of the entire human race came before everything else. All countries and organizations must abandon all unrealistic fantasies. You promised very well, but did you do it? Jiang Tian shook his head in disappointment. You didn't. During the preparatory meeting of the Mythological Alliance, you said with certainty that you have the ability to deal with the secret realms of your own country. You refused to cooperate with us to take down the Tunguska Magic Lake, but now? I was wrong. It was for my own selfish interests that I forgot our oath. I am the one who betrayed the interests of the entire human race. Putin was speechless. His face was full of shame as he prostrated himself on the ground and wailed. The other two heads of state were also regretful. In fact, Russia wasn't the only one with selfish motives. Many heads of state were secretly opposed to the Mythological Alliance. Egypt and Japan had refused to purchase Kuelian, and the Egyptian government was even secretly in contact with the Black Pyramid's secret realm. The reason was self-evident. Since the middle of the last century, the United States and the superbrain had worked closely together, allowing the United States technology to surpass many of the world's major countries. In recent years, Jiang Tian and the rise of Tianqing School had made Huaxia and Sidoni's international status rise. They had gained a lot of power in the Earth Defense Coalition forces and the Mythological Alliance. On the one hand, many heads of state were unwilling to completely obey Jiang Tian and the Mythological Alliance. On the other hand, they took it for granted that as long as they cooperated with the hidden secret realms and alien gods, they could replicate this success. They could even compete with Sidoni and Huaxia, as well as Jiang Tian and the Mythological Alliance. But they didn't know that not all powerhouses were as harmless as the superbrain and Jiang Tian, who fought for mankind. If many countries had used Kuelian or joined forces with the powerhouses of Tianqing School in the beginning, these unnecessary sacrifices might not have happened at all. It was precisely because they had all kinds of unrealistic fantasies that they didn't take the most decisive and harsh blows against the alien powerhouses. This caused the countries to fall into a passive position and caused a large number of casualties. Now, various alien gods had infiltrated the mortal world. It was difficult to use nuclear weapons and Kuelian to carry out large-scale killings. Putin and several other heads of state kowtowed together. Putin's head was even bleeding. He looked pitiful. "Okay, I can do it." Seeing this, Jiang Tian was silent for a moment and sighed helplessly. "I, Kong Teichu, can forgive you, but will the Russian soldiers and people who died in vain forgive you? I know what to do, as long as you are willing to do it." A trace of struggle flashed across Putin's face. In the end, it all turned into endless determination and determination. He pulled out a pistol from the guard's hand and walked out of the door. A moment later, there was a gunshot and the sound of a corpse falling to the ground outside the door. Next to him, the Japanese Prime Minister and the Egyptian President were trembling in fear. They kept kowtowing, for fear that Jiang Tian would also force them to commit suicide. But in the end, "Forget it, it's good that you know you were wrong. If I don't kill them, I won't be able to restore spirit energy with ease." Jiang Tian ignored them. Instead, he sighed softly and walked out of the door. His eyes flashed with monstrous murderous intent. In fact, even if Putin was unwilling to disclose the information, the intelligence agencies of the Pentagon, the Earth Defense Coalition forces, and the Tianqing School had penetrated into the Russian military and gathered almost all the relevant information about the Tunguska Demon Lake. They were a demon race that invaded the Earth with the Annihilator in ancient times. Back then, they had fought bloody and cruel battles with Emperor Yu, Emperor Xing, and other ancient great sages. Even Emperor Yu might have fallen in their hands. Of course, this race also paid the price in blood, and there was not much left. As the Star Destroyer crazily devoured spirit energy and the immortal trap array descended, this race gradually became dormant. But for various reasons, they once again rose from the ashes. Jiang Tian could ignore the powerhouses of other countries' grotto heavens and gods of other races, but Jiang Tian could not sit idly by and do nothing about the demons of the Tunguska Demon Lake. The Tunguska Demon Lake was located on the south side of the Siberian Plateau, near Chita City. It was at the extreme northeast of Huaxia, and its threat to Huaxia was self-evident. For Huaxia's safety, Jiang Tian had no choice but to take action to suppress it. After Jiang Tian went out, he made some arrangements. Then he turned into a golden rainbow that pierced through heaven and earth, shooting toward the north. Within a few hours of the Tunguska Demon Lake eruption, more powerhouses of secret realms and other races took action, declaring war on Jiang Tian and the Myth Alliance, and clashing with the Global Defense Coalition Army. Near the Marshall Islands in the Pacific Ocean, a sea demon with a human body and a shark head retreated calmly after overturning an aircraft carrier of the Earth Defense Coalition Army. When the news spread, the world was in an uproar. In India, a god of other races with an elephant head and a human body appeared on the streets of Cairo. He called himself the Divine Elephant and wanted the head of state of India to submit to him. He fought the army head-on and was not afraid of the volleys of missiles. He destroyed the number 1 temple of Buddhism, Avalokitesvara Temple, and killed many eminent monks. When old Rulai Lotus rushed over, he had already disappeared without a trace, causing Lotus to fly into a rage. Such evil acts continued to erupt on a global scale. The enemies were like a storm, and humans were retreating in defeat. The entire world was in chaos. We should have listened to the Taichu Alliance leader and not acted on our own. These divine spirit realm powerhouses of other races are indeed not on the same side as us. Sigh, we were too arrogant. The Taichu Alliance leader is the wise one. In the eyes of the gods of other races and the sleeping beings of the secret realms, we are really like ants. We have no right to negotiate, and we don't even have the right to be used. In the face of the crisis of annihilation, the heads of state of various countries were frightened and regretful. They scrambled to apologize to Hua Xia, Sidoni, and the Myth Alliance and asked for help, hoping that Jiang Tian would let bygones be bygones and come out to suppress them. It's obvious that the best opportunity to eliminate the gods of other races and the sleeping powerhouses of the secret realms was during a preparatory meeting of the Global Myth Alliance. But unfortunately, the heads of state of various countries missed the opportunity. The female reporter from the BBC who had reported on the ghost emperor of Mount Mang sighed helplessly in front of the camera. According to statistics, in just a few days, the human army has suffered 130,000 casualties and 250,000 civilian casualties. This is the most painful loss and the biggest disaster for mankind after the Second World War. Why didn't Kong Techu come out? Only he can suppress them now. Billions of people around the world trembled and couldn't eat or sleep in peace. They hoped that Jiang Tian would turn the tide again and save mankind. If he hadn't torn the immortal trap array, these gods of other races and the monsters of the secret realms wouldn't have come out. What is he doing? Why hasn't he suppressed them yet? He tore the immortal trap array, awakened the sleeping powerhouses, and caused chaos in the world. Of course he has to calm them down. If he can't do it, he will be a sinner. What bullshit savior? Just like what the famous sects of the Preaching Dynasty said, he is the Terminator, the jinx of Earth. Many people lost their patience and didn't insult the gods of other races. Instead, they despised Kong Techu loudly and were filled with righteous indignation. Under extreme fear and the threat of death, the cowardice, selfishness, ugliness, and despicableness of human nature were magnified thousands of times and exposed. Indeed, after the immortal trap array was torn, the gods and demons of other races around the world rioted at the same time and defeated the conventional human army. But mankind has no right to blame Kong Techu. A commentator from Agence France-Presse roared with tears in his eyes, his face full of grief and indignation on TV. Back then, Kong Techu wanted to tear the immortal trap array and restore the spirit chi. You were bewitched by the famous sects of the Preaching Dynasty and slandered him. You couldn't wait for him to die. In fact, the crisis of the apocalypse had always been there. The ruins of deity and the dimensional world were close at hand. He was the one who saved Earth alone. During the preparatory meeting for the Global Mythological Alliance, Jiang Taichu once suggested that we should be vigilant against or attack the gods of other races. We should form a global mythological alliance and establish a godly soul contract with them. However, the leaders of the various countries strongly objected to Jiang Taichu's actions against the gods of other races. They went back on their word and tore up the previous agreements. But how did we do it? Many people chose to remain silent or simply supported the leaders of their countries and the so-called gods of their countries. They opposed Kong Techu's global attack on the gods of other races and Arcana Land and the Global Mythology Alliance. Because you think that he is your god, your protector. But now? They are the same as Kong Techu expected. They are just thugs and demons. Chapter 1267. Kong Techu is the master of the other three worlds. Each of those worlds is more beautiful than Earth and more suitable for cultivation. He even has the chance to step on the ancient path of the stars and go deep into the universe. Does he need to fight and take risks for mankind? He doesn't need to, but he still carried thousands of curses and took great risks to do it, and he did it. Kong Techu has done too much for mankind on Earth and shouldered too much. But mankind has never thanked Kong Techu, never completely trusted Kong Techu, and never fully supported Kong Techu. We are always thinking about our own interests and making our own calculations. We have never treated mankind on Earth as a community with a shared future. Now, what right do mankind have to blame Kong Techu? What right do we have to ask Kong Techu to sell it for us? The words of this commentator were widely spread on social media and the number of reposts reached hundreds of millions. If I were Kong Techu, I'm afraid I'd be completely disappointed in mankind too. If I were him, I'd probably choose to stand by and do nothing. Many people fell silent and despaired after reading this. Mom, will Earth really be taken over by those monsters? Will they really enter our villa? In the living room of the Hilton Manor, little Paris trembled in her mother's arms and said in fear, "Let Russia be finished, let Egypt be destroyed, let Japan sink. Let this cowardly and despicable world disappear completely. It's so disappointing." Paris drank large mouthfuls of red wine and looked at the TV screen with tears in her eyes as she said angrily. But just when mankind all over the world was in despair and fear, General Keynes, an important member of the Global Defense Coalition forces, solemnly announced at the United Nations building, Kong Techu will sweep across the major secret lands in the world and suppress the gods of the alien races one by one. On behalf of the Myth Alliance and the Earth Defense Coalition forces, I urge the relevant forces to join the Myth Alliance as soon as possible and sign the alliance contract to avoid unnecessary sacrifices. Kong Techu is going to take action. How is that possible? Countless people exclaimed in disbelief. On the other hand, Hua Xia's military broadcast a short 3-minute video on the Look at Me live broadcast. Then, all the major media outlets around the world scrambled to report on it. The satellite captured a golden rainbow that pierced through the sky from Mount Amay in the southwestern hinterland of Hua Xia Strait to the north like a peerless heavenly sword across the earth. Destination: Russia, Siberian Plateau, south of Chita City, Tunguska Devil Lake. Kong Techu didn't give up on us after all. We're saved. The human race on Earth is saved. Savior. He is the real savior. Many people were crying tears of joy as they hugged each other and cried loudly. Countless people spontaneously walked to the streets, holding up Jiang Tian's portrait and shouting the names of the Savior and Jiang Tian. Or, they gathered in front of Jiang Tian's huge statue, prostrating themselves in worship and praying piously as if they were seeing a god. Sigh, sometimes I feel that he is so ruthless, so sinister and cunning, but most of the time he is so silly and innocent, just like a child. Paris shook her head and smiled bitterly, with tears in her smile. In Tianqing School, Sasaki Haisha and many other disciples also surrounded Wolf King and asked curiously, "Wolf King, this Tunguska Devil Lake is very mysterious. Even Master told us not to set foot in it easily. What is its origin? You served in the Russian Winter Soldier organization back then, so you should know." The Devil Lake was just a folk saying that was created in the Tunguska explosion in 1908. At that time, the explosion was like thunder. A beam of light pierced through the sky and a huge mushroom cloud rose. The powerful shock wave and light radiation turned the 2,000 square kilometers of virgin forest around the Tunguska Devil Lake into powder and the earth into scorched earth. For several days after the explosion, the sky over a radius of 9,000 miles was shrouded in orange smoke, and a continuous white night appeared in large areas. After the research and computer simulation by the Russian scientific research team, the power of the explosion was equivalent to the explosion of 100 nuclear weapons, but nuclear weapons had not been born at that time. Therefore, this Devil Lake was known as one of the unsolved mysteries of Earth. Many researchers and mystery enthusiasts collected information and research, and put forward various hypotheses, such as a planetary impact, the fall of an alien spaceship, a small black hole. There were all kinds of theories, but there was no conclusion, and there was endless debate. Even if I was the founder of the Winter Soldier organization and had a very good relationship with Great Emperor Pujin, I was not qualified to know the origin of this Tunguska Devil Lake. A self-deprecating look appeared on Alexander's face. In the end, it was the Alliance Master who found a lot of information in Pujin's mind and analyzed it by combining the information obtained before. Don't keep us in suspense, you're making us anxious. Sasaki Haisha frowned and urged. We combined all kinds of information and speculated that the Tunguska Devil Lake was caused by the immortal trap formation and planet destruction in the depths of Earth competing for spiritual energy, which caused some of the formation materials of the immortal trap formation to fall. Alexander's face was slightly solemn, and his words were shocking. I see. Everyone was shocked. Sasaki Haisha asked, "What are the origins of those creatures?" The creatures among them are the descendants of the extraterrestrial demons who invaded Earth with the Annihilator in the ancient Earth era. Alessandra sighed and said, they were gradually killed by the ancient overlords, and the remaining descendants became fewer and fewer. Coupled with the suppression of the immortal trap formation and the continuous devouring of spiritual energy by planet destruction, Earth became more and more unsuitable for them to live in. They could only hide from the world for large-scale activities. It wasn't until 1908, when a small-scale outbreak of planet destruction caused part of the immortal trap formation to fall and the Tunguska Devil Lake was formed, that they settled in. They absorbed the spiritual energy overflowing from the Devil Lake to strengthen themselves. After more than 200 years, their power has become very terrifying. Everyone was shocked when they heard this. It turned out that the Tunguska Devil Lake was connected to planet destruction in the depths of the Earth. It was a unique advantage, and it was left behind by the ancient demons. There was no doubt that this force was the most terrifying. Let's go to the Tunguska Devil Lake with Master. Maybe all the gods of the alien races in the world will go. Sasaki Haisha held her sword and shouted. Her face was cold and her beautiful eyes were murderous. No! Alexander hurriedly stopped her. Master has his reasons for letting us guard the Tianqing school. How can the sect master be at ease when the rear is unstable? A trace of pride appeared on his face as he said proudly, besides, even the ancient gods of Huaxia were subdued by the sect master, let alone these half-human, half-demon monsters. Isn't it giving them too much face by saying that they are gods? Ahem, Alexander, you seem to be a demon yourself. Next to him, Sasaki Haisha whispered. I am of the same mind as humans. Alexander looked embarrassed and then said seriously, there is blood in my veins. There's also some human blood flowing in his veins. He must be a human. Otherwise, why would I be called a werewolf? Jiang Tian's speed today was beyond the scope of human imagination. He could fly 10,000 miles in an hour. A few hours later, when night fell, he arrived near the Tunguska Devil Lake and could already see it in the distance. Around the Tunguska Devil Lake, there were green cypresses and strong old pines. The trees were abnormally tall. At this time, the essence chi of heaven and earth gushed out around the Devil Lake. From time to time, there would be giant bears roaring and elks running around. It didn't look like a devil lake, but more like a holy land for cultivation. At this time, there were hundreds of thousands of troops stationed 50 kilometers away. Helicopters hovered and landed, and fighter jets flew across the sky with long tails. Many missiles flickered in the night light. Even dozens of Quellian bases around the world were activated and aimed at the Devil Lake. At the same time, the military satellites and dozens of fighter jets stopped in the sky. The cameras were turned on, broadcasting today's battle to the world to raise the confidence of mankind and firmly restore the spirit chi. In addition, countless martial artists and cultivators from the east and west came to this place. They wanted to witness the grand scene of Jiang Tian sweeping the Devil Lake and suppressing the demons. This was the first time in history that mankind had declared war on many secret realms, forbidden lands, and alien gods. It was too exciting. Ms. Hera, you are here too? I didn't expect that this matter would even alarm you. 10 kilometers west of the Devil Lake, many overlords from the dark world gathered. A handsome young man with a head full of white hair suddenly raised his head and looked at a graceful woman who floated down from the high school, and said in pleasant surprise. He was the current top demon hunter on Earth, Pulsatilla Wang, who had replaced Van Helsing and reached the immortal state. The Temple of Gods has been integrated into the Earth Defense Coalition Army. I am also a member of the Myth Alliance, so of course I can't ignore it. Hera floated down, a gentle smile appearing on her pretty face as she spoke softly. The Temple of Gods used to be an organization of overlords that worked closely with the British military. When Sidoni was fighting for the Blood Orchid, Jiang Tian swept the Temple of Gods and even killed Zeus. There was a bit of tension between the two sides. But now, under the crisis of the end of the world, these small conflicts had been put aside. Many overlords around the world were proud to join the Earth Defense Coalition Army. Even entire sects, families, and organizations had joined the Myth Alliance. Among them, there were even old monsters who had lived in seclusion for hundreds of years. Like the famous Preaching sects and the Tunguska Devil Lake, there were only a few who dared to fight with Jiang Tian. And this battle was related to whether the Global Myth Alliance could be promoted and established, whether it could stand firm, and whether mankind could recover spirit chi and enter a new era. Naturally, no one could ignore it. Glory for all eternity. A Hua Xia martial artist with a long sword on his back exclaimed. If Kong Teichu can successfully recover spirit chi, mankind will start a new era. His achievements will be recorded in history. However, I just saw the information that was just released. The Tunguska Devil is extremely powerful. I heard that he survived several nuclear explosions. Pulsatilla Wang said worriedly, Senior Hera, do you think Kong Teichu can create a miracle? Miracle? There are no miracles with him. Everything is normal. A deep reverence appeared on Hera's face. Then her expression became serious and she frowned. It's just that the reaction of the overlords of the Tunguska Devil Lake is too bizarre. Kong Teichu has declared war on them and announced it to the world. They are surrounded by an army, but they haven't done anything. Chapter 1268. As soon as these words came out, a trace of vigilance appeared on everyone's faces, and their eyes were filled with confusion. That's right, the Tunguska Demon Lake was abnormally calm. After the Quellian launched the attack, the Fiend army had already retreated from many cities and retreated into the lake. Then, the Russian army surrounded the lake and bombarded it several times, but the Tunguska Demon Lake didn't move at all. Could there be some kind of conspiracy behind this? Boom! Suddenly, a huge pillar of water shot out from the lake like a peerless heavenly sword being unsheathed. It was about to pierce the sky. An invisible force like a nuclear explosion turned into billowing airwaves, crushing the surrounding trees and causing the earth to tremble. A supreme demon stood proudly in the sky. He was 10 meters tall and was as majestic as a mountain. He had 6 arms, and his entire body was covered in black scales that seemed as if they were carved from black precious gold. His hair was draped over his shoulders, and he only had one eye. His aura was extremely frightening. Anyone who trespasses in the Tunguska Demon Lake will be killed without mercy. When these words were spoken, they were like thunderclaps, causing the trees within a radius of 100 miles to shake violently. Many soldiers, even with special earplugs, couldn't withstand it and fell to the ground with blood spurting out of their mouths. The strength of a sky immortal. Is he King Tunguska? Seeing this scene, Pulsatilla was shocked. No. This is the gatekeeper of King Tunguska, codenamed Caesar. According to the current public information, he has the strength of a sky immortal. A few years ago, he attacked the Winter Palace alone and forced the former emperor of Russia to bow his head. He didn't dare to release nuclear weapons to suppress the lake anymore and listed this place as a military-restricted area. No one dares to disturb it. Hera frowned and said, as soon as Caesar appeared, suddenly, many overlords around them felt as if they were facing a formidable enemy. Their energy was suppressed and they couldn't even move their little fingers. This scene was also captured by the military's satellites and surveillance planes. Billions of people around the world saw it clearly through the video. Is this the strength of a sky immortal? I heard that there are only a few sky immortals in Tianqing school now. But the gatekeeper of the Tunguska Demon Lake already has such strength. Not to mention, there are the merfolk, the Atlantean civilization, the ancient Egyptian gods in the Black Pyramid, and the Sky Garden. In front of the screen, countless people were worried. Don't worry. As long as Kong Techu comes, these devils will definitely be finished in minutes. Someone encouraged everyone. Caesar, Kong Techu is reviving the spiritual energy of all the creatures in the world, and you will also benefit from it. It is only right that you sign a soul contract with him. You are a race from the universe. How can we not worry about you living on Earth? Hera stepped forward and spoke to Caesar in a sweet voice. Her cultivation had already surpassed the immortal state and reached the Earth immortal realm. However, there was still a huge gap between them. However, since she was a member of the Myth Alliance, how could she show weakness? How could he embarrass Kong Techu? Scram. Caesar didn't waste any time talking nonsense. He raised his hand and pushed out a palm. Immediately, black demonic chi surged out like raging waves. It crossed thousands of meters and pushed toward Hera and the others. Let's attack together. More than a dozen overlords above the immortal state jumped up and used their secret arts and dharma artifacts. In a blink of an eye, the light flames formed into shields and shields, trying to resist Caesar's attack. However, it was useless. A dozen immortal state overlords were knocked out with blood spurting out of their mouths. The Pulsatilla Wang, who bore the brunt of the attack, exploded and turned into a rain of flesh. With one attack, 10 immortal state overlords had been defeated and one of them had died. Suddenly, there was a dead silence in the sky and on the ground. Everyone clenched their fists and gritted their teeth as they stared at Caesar, but no one dared to step forward. A sky immortal overlord could completely crush them. No matter how many people they had, they would still die. The people in front of the screen hated Caesar to the core. After all, the conflict between Jiang Tian and the famous preaching sects was an internal conflict. But now, it was another race. In the ancient times, the ancient demons had beaten your ancestors into submission. Today, it is still the same. In my eyes, you are just ants. Caesar looked down at the crowd and said with a hideous smile, "My words are like gold. Do you dare to disobey me? Is the human race as weak as you say? Kong Techu once dominated the 3 realms. Just 3 days ago, he forced the famous preaching sects in Huaxia to submit to him. Today, he will destroy the demon lake and tear you to pieces." Hera's chest was stained with blood and said with hatred, "He's far too weak. What he destroyed was only the mark of the ancient emperor, not his real body." Caesar sneered and said, "But our ancestors once killed Emperor Yu. We have the blood of the ancient demons in our veins. How can we be afraid of Kong Techu? If he comes, I will blow his eyes out. Is that so?" Suddenly, a cold snort came from the sky. Caesar's expression changed drastically. He raised his head and saw a golden beam of light that pierced through the heavens and the earth, shooting toward him. "It is Kong Techu." Caesar was terrified. Others might not be able to see it clearly, but he could. The golden light was formed by countless golden flying swords. Each of them was sharp enough to penetrate a battleship or an aircraft carrier. There were 1,000 of them and they were extremely fast. Without saying a word, his figure flashed and demonic aura swept out. He retreated in the direction of the demonic lake, breaking the sound barrier in an instant. However, he was only a meter away when he was stopped by a powerful Dharma power. It was as if the world had stopped. "How can this be?" Caesar screamed. His eyes were filled with despair and fear. His face turned as pale as a sheet of paper. He had heard of Kong Techu's power and that he could kill a golden core cultivator with a flick of his finger. However, he was a foundation establishment overlord. Even if he was not as powerful as Jiang Tian, he should still have a chance to escape. However, reality was cruel. In the blink of an eye, the flying swords fell like a golden waterfall and drowned Caesar in the blink of an eye. Under the golden sword light waterfall, whether it was his ancient armor that was engraved with ancient magic patterns, his physical body that was impervious to the barrage of missiles, or even his protective shield and waist token, all of them were instantly torn into pieces like paper. In the next moment, they exploded in the air, turning into wisps that drifted in the air. After killing the gatekeeper, Caesar, the swords did not stop at all. Instead, they plunged into the demon lake like the Milky Way. These golden treasured swords were like a school of swimming fishes as they flew in all directions towards the depths of the lake. Stab, flick, cloud, chop, hack, point, collapse, hang, lift, wipe, sweep, hold, intercept, flower, circle, swim, drill. The sharp golden flying sword slashed at the many demons hiding in the depths of the water. Of course, no one could see that. They could only see the surface of the lake suddenly churning like boiling water. They could only see clouds of black demon blood spreading in the lake like black dahlias. They couldn't even hear the slightest sound. 10 minutes later, screams and angry roars came from the depths of the lake. It was as shocking as rolling thunder. Then, huge demon corpses floated to the surface of the lake. They were densely packed and covered the surface of the lake. There were thousands or even tens of thousands of them. The scene was extremely shocking and terrifying. According to the previous information, Jiang Tian's sword had killed more than half of the overlords in the Tunguska Demon Lake. Everyone, I'm Caries from the BBC. I'm now reporting live from the Tunguska Demon Lake. Kong Techu has arrived at the battlefield. In the crowd, the female reporter who had reported on the venerable Hong Yi and the Ghost King of Mount Mang was the first to see Jiang Tian. She couldn't help but shout excitedly, "Kong Techu is here!" Kong Techu. The cameras of CNN, Reuters, and other major media around the world were all focused on the figure in the void. He was dressed in white and stood with his hands behind his back. At this moment, everyone felt proud and elated. Especially the martial artists of the East, they were even more excited. They felt that everything was in the bag now that Jiang Tian was here. The Tunguska Demon Lake would definitely be defeated. Kong Techu. Kill them. Savior. The heavy responsibility of saving the world depends on you. Beat them until they're looking for their teeth on the ground. At that moment, billions of people around the world were shouting in front of the camera and waving their fists excitedly. In history, the demon overlords of the Tunguska Demon Lake had wreaked havoc on Earth several times and had devoured tens of thousands of lives. However, these incidents were treated as top secret by the military of various countries and had never been announced to the world. Recently, they resisted the Myth Alliance and the Global Defense Alliance and killed tens of thousands of Russian civilians. They had committed countless heinous crimes. Now, the time had finally come. The crust here moves frequently and is very weak. Star Destroyer once unleashed his energy to compete with the deity trap array for spirit chi. At that moment, Jiang Tian stepped on the air and arrived above the Tunguska Demon Lake. He scanned it with his divine sense. He immediately felt that the spirit chi there was more than 10 times more abundant than elsewhere. He couldn't help but be moved. Tunguska Demon, Kong Techu is here to visit. Come out. Jiang Tian did not waste any time. He let out a low roar that sounded like rolling thunder. It turned into a sound wave that seemed to have materialized and blasted the turbid waves on the surface of the Tunguska Demon Lake into the sky. The lake shook violently and even shattered many corpses. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.